Any opposed? Thank you. Next, we move into presentations with Superintendent Dr. Grimsley, the school board report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Good afternoon and happy fall from your friends at RCPS. It has actually been a great month for our small but mighty school system. We have finally established consistency in the school schedule and their mitigation procedures that have greatly reduced case and quarantine rates within the school. In fact, at one point last week, we had 0 cases of COVID at RCHS with no students or staff quarantined. Granted, that lasted for 2 days, but cases are still very low and manageable, with only 4 cases division-wide in the district right now. We remain the division with the lowest rates across the board and have been meeting with other school districts and BDH officials to share information and provide insight on best practices for reducing rates and keeping schools open. Parents have been amazing in this effort and are doing all the right things for the most part, primarily keeping their children home when they're sick and presenting with symptoms. That being said, we do realize the toll that quarantines can have on families, both academically, emotionally, and economically. We have created a data tracking system to quantify the actual number of students quarantined to possible exposure at school who actually later developed COVID. That number is staying consistent at only 1.4%. I've reached out to other superintendents in our region as well as to the Coalition of Small Rural Schools to get a better understanding of this data in order to have a larger conversation at the state level about the virtue of quarantining healthy staff and students. From what I understand at this point, other districts are seeing similar trends. As this conversation develops, I will keep everyone posted as it may warrant some local action at the state level to protect academic integrity of the instructional program for students, the economic stability of our families, and ultimately the vitality of our school community. Now, switching gears to our amazing kiddos, much has been happening in the lives of our students. RCHS has elected student government officers after all candidates had the opportunity to present a 2 to 3 minute speech to the entire student body. After the speeches, students were able to vote by secret ballot for their favorite candidates. Congratulations to the following RCHS SCA officers: Emma Jenkins, our new historian; Emma Brown, secretary; Savannah Loving, our vice president; and Liberty Sell, our president, who stunned the audience by breaking out in a surprise rap song mid-speech to the students' delight. Such a talented group of young leaders. RCES held its first ever Junior Panthers Pride Club meetings on Wednesday, September 15th. Modeled after both the RCHS Pride program, Positive Relationships Inspire a Drive for Excellence, and the Wonderful Wednesday program, students had the opportunity to explore fun enrichment activities toward the end of the school day. Examples of enrichment clubs included crafts, drama, nature, slime making, coding, baking, hip-hop dance, painting, sign language, outdoor games, and more. The Junior Panther Pride Club Day will meet each month to provide additional support and enrichment to students as we continue to establish our next normal. The RCHS Peer Mentor Program is now up and running after an extensive training event for juniors and seniors who volunteered or who were tapped to become mentors for their younger 8th grade peers. A fun mentor reveal event was held on Tuesday, September 22nd, where 8th grade students were paired with their mentors to compete in a fun challenge that promoted team building. Teams had to take photos of their groups completing each task in the challenge, like recreating a field goal post with their bodies, doing the Heisman Trophy pose, and creating the perfect cheer for their team. The students laughed and encouraged one another as they completed the tasks. The event culminated in an ice cream party for the mentors and 8th grade mentees. The excitement among students is heightened so much this year by being able to have events like this and participate in these types of activities. Having spectators back in the stands at our sports event has been a huge boost to our team spirit and morale, so thank you so much to all those who have come out to support our Panther teams. We have a number of events coming up this week in volleyball. Tomorrow night is the annual Dig Pink event at the gym. Come out to support our Lady Panthers and support breast cancer awareness, research, and treatment by wearing your best pink. There will be baskets and baked goods for raffle, and proceeds will go to the Side Out Foundation. Our golf team has had a great season, with Ignacio Marino finishing 5th in the region and Isaac Schulin finishing 1st. As regional champ, Isaac will compete in the state tournament on October 11th. Our next football game will be in Panther Stadium, hopefully next Friday at 7 o'clock. Unfortunately, we do have a very small team this year, and some minor injuries prevented us from playing last Friday. So they're set to come back this week, so hopefully everything will be good to safely field the team for Friday. We look forward to continuing to have a successful, fun, engaging, and memorable school year. And thank you as always for your continued support and advocacy for our school system. Do you have any questions for me?
I was just curious if you could summarize, thank you for the presentation. It gives all of us a lot of hope that things are improving, especially on the pandemic front. And to that end, I'm just curious if you could summarize for us what factors you believe changed in recent weeks that have resulted in a much better position vis-a-vis case rate than the first few weeks of school when we talked and things were a little topsy-turvy.
A little difficult. So it's definitely a layered approach. Number one is definitely our NCIS team, the No COVID in Schools team, who can respond directly to the cases as they happen in real time and do the contact tracing necessary. That we found in districts all over the state, whether or not they had certain layered mitigations in place. They didn't have that team in place, then we were seeing a very similar trend across the board. So that was a big one. Pulling lunches back and cohorting recesses and activities where students are congregating in different groups. That's helped a lot too, because now, and structuring classrooms with pods. That was the other biggie. So when you have only 3 or 4 kids that, especially at the elementary level, who are cohorted throughout the day, then if one does pop up positive, then you only have 2 or 3 quarantine rather than 8 to 10 that we were seeing with the old model. And then masking, of course, helps reduce quarantines by if you're in that pod 3 to 6 feet, within 3 to 6 feet, if both parties are properly masked that entire time, then you don't need to quarantine. Or if you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine. So all of that put together.
So on the cohorting, change in the cohorting front, change in how lunches are being handled, and then finally masking on any of those fronts, do you have any intention of changing anything anytime soon?
We don't want to change anything just yet, and until community rates kind of come down, and I know the school board will be talking about that next week a little bit more too. But right now what we're doing is working really well. So I would not recommend changing anything just yet.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
What time does the big pink game start tomorrow?
They start with all the games. I think the middle school game starts at 5. And then the varsity is usually after JV, so by 7, between 5 and 7. So
Sounds great. Thank you.
Dr. Lindley, you said that, I guess, Rappahannock had to forfeit the game last week? Or they just
I just
rescheduled?
rescheduled. I
Rescheduled.
believe.
How many players do you have on the varsity team this year?
They fielded, I think, they had 22 initially, and then 18 after the season started. And then with some of the injuries and things that happened, they were down to 13 to 15 to field, and they would have had to play both sides of the field, if many of them do. So.
Yeah, even with 18, you still have some playing both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the makeup? Is that just junior and senior?
I'd have to ask my athletic director for that. But I believe sophomores are playing too.
No freshmen?
No, yes, we do.
No
I
freshmen?
believe. I have to check on that for you.
8th graders?
No.
I think, don't you have 4 years of high school eligibility left? I do. We can try to help out.
Anyone who wants to.
My kid is making, I don't know what position you're
Try to get it, but I know there is some exploration into the 8-man team set up for smaller districts. A lot of smaller schools do that. Just kind of takes us out of the VHSL money. So.
And I just had one question with COVID last year, students staying at home and the teacher stress was very high.
Mm-hmm.
How is it doing this year with those students that have to stay home and teachers doing both roles?
It's stressful. It is a stressful situation no matter which side you're on, especially if you're a teacher and a parent, or a superintendent and a parent. And some of those things, so it is a stressful situation when you have certain guidelines. And when students are quarantined frequently, sometimes that causes some constraints, both in the family and academically. So, and teachers are having to do concurrent teaching again with Canvas and It's not easy. They're working really, really hard.
Thank you. All right, next presentation, we have the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center. Rebecca Haydock is the director.
And Rebecca's here. David Reardon is also here. I'll let Rebecca provide the introductions.
Hi.
Hello.
Is it okay if we give you copies of the
Sure.
presentation? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having us, and it's nice to meet you all. I don't know that I've met any of you. I believe some of you know David Reardon, who runs our Culpeper office. So thank you for having me. I did want to just introduce myself and introduce the Small Business Development Center. I think some of you are familiar. We have been working with businesses in Rappahannock for a number of years. I took over as the head of the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center in April of 2020. So I'm relatively new, and we, as the Central Virginia office, became responsible for Rappahannock in January of 2021. So our whole group is new to Rappahannock. Gary has been incredibly helpful in allowing us to meet some folks, as has Teresa Wood. Teresa helped us put together a program actually before we were responsible in 2020. We did a program here on online marketing and had a number of businesses attend. So what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is just run through this, and then I'd like to hear from you all about businesses in the area and what your priorities are. So let me just run through this presentation really quickly. Oh, you have it on here. All right, we'll just go that way. Who's running it?
I am.
You are, thank you. Next slide, please. So the Small Business Development Center, these have been around since the 1970s. There's 1,000 of them across the country. We're part of America's SBDCs. There's 27 offices in the state of Virginia, and the one that serves this Central Virginia region is Charlottesville, and also a satellite office in Culpeper that David takes care of. And the primary reason for the Small Business Development Center is to bring together the local, state, and federal resources that are available to small businesses to help them compete and succeed. So we have market research capabilities. We have different kinds of training programs. We tap into the international trade programs as well as the government contracting programs. So really for any small business, from a maker who's a sole proprietor who's just starting to sell at a farmer's market, to a large organization that is going international. Small business is up to 500 employees and 35 million in sales. So it's a big swath. And our primary work is one-on-one. It's all confidential. We work with businesses in a confidential environment so we can talk specifically about their needs. The first thing is to establish rapport with the owner. And we're the partners that they don't have to pay for. We can be a gut check, we can help do evaluations, we can bring resources to them that they may not otherwise be able to tap into. So our whole purpose is to level the playing field and help small businesses succeed. That pretty much goes over, what we do. Let's go ahead to the next slide. This is our current team. We have quite a number of people and have grown dramatically as a result of COVID-19. So I'm the director. We have an assistant director. You can see David there. On the end, we have a client services coordinator who's full-time, and we did more than 80 business training programs last year. A number of them, of course, had to do with the CARES Act, with PPP and such, but we regularly help people get their SWAM certification, small women and minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, government contracting. We do probably 6 of those a year. A lot of things are repetitive, but we're also doing things like, how do you tap into blockchain for your business? If you're selling and people want to pay you in cryptocurrency, we talk about how to do that. So it's really all over the map. Right now, a lot is about visual and branding and doing business online. So we actually have Marketing Monday, which is about being successful online. And we're also we have 2 developers on the end there because we got a grant from Go Virginia to build 100 websites for businesses that don't have them. And there's a number of those available to Rappahannock businesses as well. So But that's our team, and a lot of which were contractors. This is folks that we don't have to pay who are part of the team. So the state Virginia SBDC office has a number of folks. As you can see, they're in craft beverage, in commercialization assistant, retail and restaurant experts. I believe you all may have seen Mark Wilson. I believe he came a number of years ago and did a program for artists, and artists basically turning their art into a business. So he's still with SBDC. We have a cybersecurity consultant. And then we're hosted by Community Investment Collaborative. Is anyone familiar with CIC here?
Well, we use them for our CARES Act.
Oh, great. Okay, so you know Stephen Davis then. Okay, so Community Investment Collaborative, which is now they're Virginia's newest CDFI, which is a community development financial institution. They do microloans. They've been in business 9 years, and they adopted the SBDC in January of 2020. And it's been an incredible marriage of we're in the same building as them. They have a number of loans. They work with primarily minority businesses, rural businesses, or business owners that fall under median income. So that's just been a great relationship. They have a 16-week training program to teach someone to be an entrepreneur if they didn't go to business school and they don't really have the business basics. They go through CIC, and then what tends to happen is then they come to us. Once they've got their basics, they've started their business, they're getting going, then we can help the business if the entrepreneur is interested in growing. So that's the team at CIC. And so I've already said a lot of this, but we have a lot of programs that are specific to the small business development centers. We do market and financial research. We can even do research for the county. We access EDMIS reports, other types of reports, SBDC net. So if there's population or other data information that folks are interested in, we can run that. That's all available to us free of charge. We work with companies on strategic planning, and that's been the biggest part of what we've been doing in the last year, really reinventing business plans to be successful with a virtual front door rather than an actual front door. And again, I mentioned we have industry specialists. Every one of our business advisors also has a particular expertise. My background is in equity investments. I've owned a number of my own businesses. I'm an old farm girl from upstate New York. But I've had everything from bagels to biotech. The biotech was much more successful than the bagel business when I sold that. And I became an angel investor and a member of the Charlottesville Angel Network, and have seen literally hundreds of pitches. I'm still part of their screening committee. And so we formed the pitch preview. We have lots of businesses that are looking for equity investments. They might not be right for commercial lending. So we've developed some programs around that to help businesses do that. But we have others in the office with expertise in, online record keeping, online marketing. We have, folks, minority business background, retail and restaurant experts. So really, and we tap into others in the network. Okay, next slide. So I mentioned we'd offered over 80 training programs last year. These are just a few of them. And part of the reason that Rappahannock became part of the Central Virginia SBDC is because of the UVA Propel. We put 138 students to work in the counties working on rural businesses through UVA. And Madison wanted in. So Madison and Culpeper and Rappahannock were together out of our Culpeper office. So that's part of how the transition came about. Okay, next slide. This is our territory. We serve 10 municipalities. So we have the city of Charlottesville, counties of Albemarle, of course, Rappahannock, Madison, Culpeper, Nelson, Greene, Fluvanna, and Louisa. Next slide. And the municipalities are the primary supporters of the SBDC. The base funding comes from the SBA, which you see on the bottom left there. The Small Business Administration requires a match, and historically it's always been the municipalities that provide the match. And Rappahannock has done so, and we're very grateful for that. Thank you for your support. Virginia SBDC, as I mentioned, also provides a lot of support. They're hosted through George Mason University, so we tap into their students and research teams and innovation center assets. Go Virginia provided us with a grant this past year. That's how we're building those 100 websites. And we also were finally able to hire an assistant director. We've never had a full-time business counselor other than the director out of the main office, and now we do. So lots of growth. Next slide. Just to give you a snapshot of the numbers, this report is old, as you can see from America's SBDCs. It's from 2017. It's the last time it was run, but it shows that SBDC clients in Virginia have much higher sales growth than those that are not SBDC clients. And it also shows that the job growth rate is also quite a bit higher, 27.6% versus 5.3%. My understanding is those trends are continuing. It's basically like having business consultants free of charge when you want them, right? That's what SBDCs are about. The numbers have also exploded. Prior to 2019, 2020, I can't account for the numbers that were out of Culpeper office, but the Charlottesville office, because that was before we had responsibility, they did about 1,000 hours in business counseling a year. In 2019, 2020, we did 2,200, so we just doubled. Yeah, it was, nobody slept. We were like bankers, right? There was no sleeping. A lot of training events, advised a lot of clients one-on-one, and historically, I think we did 3.5 million in impact. That's about 20% of people letting us know if they got loans, if they got investment, if they put their own money into the business. We hit 10 million in 2019, 2020, and this past year we hit 26 million, and I'm already at about 20 million for this year. It's what's happened is, just like SBA has become a household name, the SBDCs have become a household name. So now business owners know to pick up the phone and call if they're looking for something. So I think people are just finding us. And then I popped this on here. We're new to Rappahannock, right? And I know you've been served by Lord Fairfax, and we are serving a number of businesses here, but we would love to meet more. I put a couple examples here of some of the recent businesses that we've celebrated, and it's hard to reach people. It's hard for people to trust you if they don't know you. So I'm really looking for your ideas and your support as to how can we get to know the business owners here. What would be the best way for us to introduce ourselves, or just to be here and let people know that we're available, right? And then the question that I have for you all is, we just had a board meeting and we talked about, it was an advisory board, which is, and Gary attended and helped with that. It was about really, what are the areas where you would like us to focus in your county? Is there a particular trend? I see amazing food companies here. Of course, agriculture, food production. I've heard that there's a decent artistic makers population. Yeah, so if we were to design a program specifically to run here for Rappahannock, or, is there something you can think of for us to just get the word out and let people know that we're here and we're partners and we're neighbors and we're willing to help?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good presentation. So since you just mentioned on the arts front, we have the Rappahannock Association for Arts in the Community, RAC, RAAC, and they're very well organized and do really robust programs. So perhaps we can at least get you in touch with leadership in that organization. They do the Fall Arts Tour, which is very successful for starters, and then within that, a whole pool of artists, and maybe some of them would benefit from the type of work you do. I just had a couple of questions. One thing that has occurred to me that Rappahannock County could do to help agricultural growers maybe sell their products outside of the commodity market and in sort of a value added way would be the branding of a Rappahannock County agricultural tag. And I don't know if that's the type of assistance you can provide, but it occurs to me that, Rappahannock County beef, Rappahannock County apples, Rappahannock County, whatever it might be. But we have a beautiful county logo and we have great agricultural products. And I just think that those two married together could at least give agricultural folks the option, perhaps, if there was a system by which to do it, to market their products to retailers and directly to consumers, branded as sort of a Rappahannock County origin product. So that I throw that out there because it's something I've thought about that I've never acted on, or we haven't, and maybe you could help in that regard. My second question is the international trade hook. Is that primarily export promotion of local products? Is that the
there's importing involved too. You know,
Okay.
we've solved some issues for some importers. Of course, the state is very motivated to help exporters,
Right.
and there is funding available. But it's developing. I'm actually a certified global business professional.
Okay.
So I help people with their international business plans, make sure they have what they need. And then our International Business Development Department, which is run out of Northern Virginia, they'll get a team of students actually from George Mason, and they'll do market evaluations to figure out what markets they should go into. We
I
have
see.
folks that help with an international website.
Okay.
And on your other comment, I'd love to talk to you about that. We would need
Okay.
a champion, but it's a great time to build a website, right?
Sure.
And to develop, and we have e-commerce experts as well. That was actually the first hire I made when I got there, was an e-commerce expert, so people could figure out how to
Okay.
sell their goods online.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that's not too far off the mark. And my last question, and pardon me for sounding a little pushy here. So we're trying to expand broadband coverage in Rappahannock County and take advantage of VATI funds and other funding sources. And to that end, we're in a regional agreement to expand broadband coverage in Rappahannock County. And obviously, small business owners would be primary beneficiaries of such a broadband system.
I would
in our
be
county.
happy to write a letter of support.
I was hoping you might have access to funding sources that we haven't thought about.
Okay. Well,
So,
I would chat with VEDP and see,
Right.
because I know, I'd have to think about that.
Or the
We could do some
SBA
research.
or something outside of the traditional
Well,
telecom funding.
Actually, yes.
Go to
And
Virginia.
Stephen Davis is the person, I'd loop him in on this
We don't need
conversation.
much. We don't need much, really.
Well, we just heard about Stanton, which is not in my region, getting $700,000 for a project. There's money out there
Okay.
right now, right? And
So we'd love to work with you.
yes, that would be great.
Find some money.
Let's set up a time.
Great.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments or?
Was that a dairy farm in upstate New York?
Actually, beef and horses. Yeah, but I raised dairy cows to buy my first car because they were selling for more.
Good answer.
I just had to do all the weeding to get my dad to give me the grain. So as a restaurant owner, I have quite a few questions/comments because to me, this sounds great, but it also is a little bit confusing to me because you've got Virginia Tourism Corporation, you've got the SBA, you've got the Virginia Department of Economic Development, you've got, there's like a slew of folks wanting to help business owners, which is great. But there's not a one-stop shopping. You have to go to multiple different
So I'm glad you brought that up. So SBA has established these offices for us to be the local boots on the ground. So, and we are the funded organization. So you may have heard of SCORE or the Women's Business Centers. They are not funded by the SBA, but they have mentors and counselors. The economic development organizations are designed primarily for attracting businesses. It's also help with business retention. Our job is to help with business success, is to help them, have healthy profit margins, get the cash that they need, create jobs, identify new markets. Basically, we're a little different, is we're really one-on-one, hand-holding, working with you, crunching numbers if necessary, whatever it takes, to get the business to the next level. We meet with their boards, we meet with their investors, we work through hurdles, we help them hire executive talent if necessary. So we're the hands-on people.
That's great. I know with VTC and folks like that, we've had them come in and teach social media courses and stuff like that for the small businesses. And you asked for a contact or a lead in this county, and the businesses of Rappahannock
That's Teresa, right?
yeah, which would be a great place to start. And hopefully we can get those kind of programs going again, because I know with COVID, we stopped all the hands-on and face-to-face, and
Right.
you can only do so much through Zoom.
It was,
Right.
their quarterly event was our plan to bring them in, but we haven't had one of those.
Yeah.
Oh,
Since they've been on board because of COVID.
well, you've got my business card. And all of the programs belong to you. The SBDC belongs to you, right? I don't own it, nobody owns it. I'm caretaking and trying to make sure we can put it to use as best as possible. But any programs that you want to run, any things that you want to do up here, let's talk about it, because I'm really eager, to make sure that the businesses know that we're here.
Okay.
I would just add one thing that I always hear from organizations that have offices in Charlottesville or Culpeper is that I really think having a local presence makes a difference.
Yeah.
Even if it's just office hours in a set place.
We will absolutely do that. Yeah, and
Because
we
we-
do, well,
I'm sorry, I was going
Yeah.
to add a little bit more.
oh, sorry.
So we do have an administrative office out on 211, and it has a lower level, which has really great meeting space and AV capabilities. And I don't know how the other board members feel about it, but I think you all setting up there and keeping some office hours would really be a natural fit, because it also serves as like our visitor center. So it's already a sort of a center for commerce and encouraging business.
That's perfect. Yeah, we would love that. David, you're right. David's writing that down.
notes.
So, what we're doing, we're kind of, during COVID, we are where we live, but we're driving all over the place. And if you'd like to, we can set a regular day of the week, or, we could promote it and say SBDC is here on these days. But then, of course, there's folks that don't want to come out. We'll, of course, meet them via Zoom. And if you've got a room with AV capability, we could do hybrid meetings. We could run a training here, and we could broadcast it to the other counties.
And there's picnic tables outside, so if people wanted to sit
Sounds fun,
outside,
yeah.
if they didn't want to be in an enclosed space, it's got a lot of options.
That's great.
And it's a nice small room where if you did want to meet with people one-on-one there too, that would be a good space for it. So I don't know how the other board members feel about it, but I think that's a really wonderful and underutilized space.
Good suggestion.
Yeah. So who do we talk to about setting up a regular, you, okay?
One stop shopping.
Is there anything that you don't do?
Other things. They're just further down on the list.
Right.
System.
We would love that. Thank you. That's a great suggestion.
Any other questions or comments?
Thanks for spending
Thank you
time.
very
Thank
much
you
for
so
your time.
much. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
Next on the agenda, we have the Library Board of Trustee update. Victoria Fortuna posted, or we have something on board doc,
Yes.
but here to speak to it.
Yes, hi,
Thank you.
I'm Victoria Fortuna. I'm president of the Library Board of Trustees, for those people who don't know me. So September 2nd, I sent you a copy of the completed space needs study for the library. We were very pleased with the turnout with the surveys. We had 477 people complete the surveys. That's about 6.5% of our total population. We designed this survey ourselves with the help of Enteros and with some assistance with Fauquier, who had done Fauquier Public Library, which had done a library survey a few years ago and worked with Research America. A number of people complimented us on the survey itself and the contents. So we're very pleased that people participated. We also met with a variety of stakeholder groups, the schools and educators, the nonprofit businesses, government agencies, senior groups, teens, and children's groups. And we also had one meeting at the elementary school, which is open to all the members of the community. And we got a lot of great feedback from people. After we received the survey results and the analysis of the survey, as well as the meetings from Anteros. Anteros presented us with a space, I guess, sort of like a menu of spaces that we could add to our library. And they came in with their recommendation of about 16,000 square feet for the new library. The Library Board of Trustees cut that down a little bit. We decided to take the risk that we probably didn't need a 100-person meeting room space, because we are hopeful that something like that would be built elsewhere in the county. We also did not go with a media room or a sound room where people could work on things like that, or a major maker space. However, we do have some flexible spaces built into this space needs study that could be transitioned as we see necessary and as the community would want. What else could I say to you? I sent the copy to you of the space needs study, and I sent it out also to all the participating study group, shareholder groups. And I have not received any comments or questions from them. I did receive one comment from a private citizen, just on the methodology and that sort of thing. And just to say a little bit of background, I know that some of you have been to the library recently. I know Christine was there. But just to give you a flavor for why we're doing this project, a lot of people don't come in that frequently. First of all, we have a staff of 3 people who sit in an open room that's not visible from, the library is not visible really from any point in that staff room. And there is absolutely no privacy to have a private conversation between any of the staff members and the library director. Secondly, every shelf in the library is jammed tight with materials. If we purchase new materials, we have to consciously go through and discard some materials because there's just no room left. And as a consequence, our materials for the adults are limited, and as you probably noted in the survey, a lot of our adults are asking for a larger collection of adult materials. Our space for teens is a corner in the library, which consists of 2 bookcases and a beanbag chair. When we had our meetings with the teens, it came through very loud and clear that there's no place in the county for them to meet after school hours and to work on projects, but also to socialize, to get together. And I mean, there's just no place for teens to do that. That's safe, that's accessible, and that doesn't cost any money. We are very fortunate that Amanda was the former children's library, and she's, as you know, she's developed some wonderful programs for the children, the preschool children, the elementary school children, and that focus on early literacy. But those programs are very popular, and the space that we have is very crowded. It does not provide for a lot of room for kids to move around, for them to go through materials at their level, meaning height level, and there's no family restroom in that area. We have only 1 meeting room space. It's very highly utilized, less so the last year with COVID, but nevertheless, we really need a larger space, and we need a space where we don't have to store the chairs along the walls. It's, I mean, it's a workable space, but it's not all that wonderful. Finally, most libraries have areas where people could access a computer, either their own or a computer that the library's provided. And I don't know if any of the Friends people are here, it looks like not, but I'd just like to acknowledge the Friends of the Library applied for a grant from the Path Foundation, and they were able to give us money in order to replace all the computers in the library. So that's been done, so that I'm very pleased about that. But nevertheless, we have plastic tables next to each other with plastic chairs where people can sit at their computer and see what the next person next to them is working on. There's absolutely no privacy. So if someone has to work at the library because they don't have access to internet at home, they have no way of keeping any confidential information confidential. Anyone can see exactly what's going on there. So that's sort of why we've kind of gone down this path, and I don't believe we've ever talked about it expressly with you all. That's, I don't know, that's kind of it. I really also wanted you to feel free to ask questions about the space needs study, if you had any, or any survey results. At this point, we have asked Interos to move into phase 2 and look at the site itself, the physical site, the building, the conditions of the building as they stand now. And we've asked a civil engineer to come in and do some preliminary work, which Gary actually met with them when they were there to go through the site, and also to look, because we have well and septic for the book barn as well as for the library. So we have to be mindful of how that would all work in the event we undertake this renovation and expansion there. So
Thank you.
that's
I
kind
think
of
we have
it.
some comments.
Any
Questions?
comments?
Mr. Whitson?
I was, you preempted my question a little bit, but maybe you could expand on it. So I was going to ask what happens next? So you go into phase 2, what will that entail? And am I correct that with the engineer's involvement, part of phase 2 is to determine whether the current site of the library could be workable by way
Correct.
of an expansion of the current building?
That's exactly
Okay.
right. Gil from Interos, who you met, put together some preliminary, I wouldn't call them they're sort of bubble drawings is what I would call them, of what the space, how the contiguous space would look. And with the help of the civil engineer, they are evaluating whether or not a 12,000 square foot building would fit on that site. And if so, what the constraints would be in terms of parking and access, and how the building would have to be configured in order to accommodate it on the site.
And how large is the present site?
The present site, you mean I think it's 5 acres, a little over 5 acres. But as you know, we've got the high point with substantial rock, which you can see as you drive up, and then that lower point.
Right.
So,
I don't think I have been at the library lately. It must have been my doppelganger.
no, you came for a meeting.
Public Safety Committee with Ron.
No, you came for one of our board meetings.
It might have
Oh,
been
that
a
was
year
a while
ago.
ago.
About a year ago. Well, that was recent.
You should have taken the credit.
Yeah. Yeah, you came for one of our board meetings.
I did.
Yeah.
I was there for that.
Yeah.
But I do think, I thought the public meetings, I went to a couple of them, and I thought Enteros did a really good job of listening, and I thought there were what came out of that discussion, at least for me, that was a real touchstone on which I think I probably will still act, is a discussion of other small communities. And Ms. Donahue and I actually talked with the county administrator from, they never had a library.
Oh, St. Charles.
Charles City Council.
Charles
Thank
City
you.
County.
Yeah,
Charles City County.
Yeah, we actually ran into the county administrator, and asked her about her library,
Mm-hmm.
and she was very complimentary of
Anteros.
Anteros and the
Oh,
work
good.
they did for them. So it occurs to me that at some point, you know, some of us should go take a look at libraries like that so we can see from a practical perspective what a different, upgraded, modernized library would look like and how it would
Right.
fit. And I mean, because it's one thing to look at bubble drawings and
It's,
PowerPoint
and
slides.
exactly.
Yeah, so I think we should do that and get out and see what's out there in communities our size. It's really important.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to
Yeah.
join in that. One thing that Gil from Anteros mentioned to us is that the Charles City County people had originally wanted to do about a 16,000 square foot building, and because of the financing and funding available to them, they only ended up with an 8,000 square foot library, and they're already kind of kicking themselves for not really going the extra mile to build a bigger space because they feel like they've already outgrown it. So, and just, I did dig up some things just for your information. Culpeper Library is 20,400 square feet. Samuel's Library is 28,000. The Fauquier Library, which is one of 3 libraries that they have, the main library on, I guess that's, I don't,
Old Alexandria.
Alexandria Pike is 16,000 square feet, and the Madison County Library, even though it's a much smaller library and has a much smaller collection, is 6,000 square feet, which is
Okay.
20% larger than us.
Hmm.
So, any other questions?
I was just wondering with the trend today with not just young people, but almost everyone shopping online, you know, we've seen a decline of brick and mortar retail. I just wonder how that may also affect libraries in the future.
Well, libraries are being used in different ways. It's becoming more of a meeting place where people can go and work together. Also, the way libraries, modern libraries, if we go, we'll kind of see like how they now display things in a much more user-friendly way, as opposed to having high stacks where no one can see over the top. The stacks are much lower, more kind of like a retail environment, you know, like you'd see in a bookstore or something like that, where things are within reach, and they'll display things with the covers facing front, so that takes up a bit more room. So that's one part of it. Yes, people are using things more online, but books are still used quite a lot. I don't know, I don't have facts on like book sales or stuff like that, but it did come through in our survey that people go there to read or get books for the most part. That was like, and you'll see that reflected in the survey. So our community is still very much book-oriented at this point. I would say that the major space that we've discussed adding are spaces for people to work and to have a comfortable place to sit and read or do research. And that includes like more comfortable chairs and workspaces for computers, and spaces for small groups to meet.
Victoria, I want to say that my wife is constantly ordering books from your library, and she's really pleased with the service there.
Oh,
She
great.
gets-
Well, thank you.
Seem to find them and get them there
That's
for
a
her. Yeah.
very much compliment to our library director, Amanda.
I know my chef does the same, so thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thanks for the update.
Okay, great.
Thank you
And
very much.
well, I will keep you updated after the next phase is complete and give you an idea about where we are. Okay, great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move into the public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak, please be recognized. And when you come up to the mic, give us your name and the district you're in before you start your comment. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Steph Ritter, and I'm from the Wakefield District, and I have comments on two issues. One is to thank you for your support of All Points Broadband. I think it's going to be the best service we can get at the least expense and will serve people in this county the most equitably. One of the things I worry about is that since the surveys for who's not getting the internet or adequate service are online, there's going to be a significant undercount. So I just hope you guys will continue to support pursuing All Points and providing that service. Then the other thing is that Becky Burr is going to come up for appointment to the Parks and Rec. And Becky's a neighbor of mine, and she is a fabulous neighbor. She has mediated a number of issues on North Post Road, which for those of you who've been on the board, you may have heard about issues that come up on North Post Road. The other thing is she's an attorney who has extensive knowledge of information technology. She's taken programs in nonprofit board governance. And I'm telling you, because I served on that board, that is something that would be really useful. And she knows her native plants. So I can't recommend her more highly. I hope that you'll appoint her to the Parks and Rec. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with that meeting.
Steph, you guys are a problem child up there on North Post.
Thank you.
I was pointing you to her, not thinking.
Thank you.
Anita Ramos, Hampton District. I want to echo everything that the library board member has said. I'm a retired librarian from Fairfax County. I've spent 27 years in the library business in Fairfax. I've seen renovation, I've seen building, and I can agree with her highly. Every library that I've ever seen built wasn't built big enough. The library I worked in, Fairfax City, built a brand new library in 2007, moved in 2008. My beloved Virginia Room collection there is now packed to the gills and doesn't have any more room, even though we asked for more room at the time because we knew what we were going to get over time. Also, I have a very, very dear old friend that works for Fauquier Library. They decided a few years ago not to build another library, and she's one of those people that has to make the decision about pulling books because they don't have enough space. They are being heavily used. This library is heavily used. You don't see it as well in this last year or so because you don't see people in the building, but they are filling people's requests constantly. So I just want to remind you all that these places are used by a percentage of the county. And in most counties, it's literally half. I'm not sure what it is in Rappahannock. I go into their library often because I don't own a printer, so I go in to do some copying, and some of that's private stuff. And I'm sitting next to somebody else that can see everything I'm doing too. So anyway, having a little privacy there. I'll put in a plug for teenagers because my original training was in children's literature and children's services. And teenagers kind of need to start doing that break away from the children's things. And they're not always ready to be hanging out with all the adults. And it's good if they have a little nook for themselves, a little bit more than they've got now. So anyway, please help these guys out as much as you can. And the bigger, honestly, is the better in the long run. So you don't have a question 4 or 5 years after you've built a building as to what are we going to do next. And there'll be new things coming along the pike. We don't know what'll come along as far as new media. So have room for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sheila Gressinger, Hampton District. You know I like visuals. But first I want to commend Debbie and everybody on the board who wrote the letter to VDOT to appeal the decision on that stretch of 211. I drove it today. I was out to off the grid and I was coming back. And that speed limit is absolutely unconscionable. It has to be addressed. It's no matter what you're going to do. I think I saw the sign, you know, watch the road and all that kind of stuff. That thing has to come down. The 45 is just unconscionable. I mean, you have some areas where there's housing there now, and you have young children playing around that area. And then just the fact of being able to stop and pull into a district, we don't want to stop our businesses from being able to have an opportunity, which is why I brought this thing about possibilities. I keep hearing sometimes, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. And I think I told y'all a long time ago, the race belongs not merely to the swift, but to the far-seeing, those who anticipate change. And my one thing would be, I don't want to see zoning be the death of Rappahannock. You can zone yourself to death, and we don't need that. And then on a happier note, when I was down in North Carolina, we went to a gift shop, and I found some clothespins that were decorated. So I made a little clothespin for everybody. That you can either put on a tree.
What am I getting this time, Sheila? I still have my pencil that tells me to take a nap.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
That's awesome.
On snack bags, or you can put it on your office to hold papers together. But it's just a
Different kind of
reminder
lapel pin.
that we're all in this together.
What are you saying about it? Neighbor? That's great. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila.
You're full of surprises. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? I do see we have several people on Zoom. If there's anyone on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your Zoom hand and Mr. Curry will unmute you. All right, not seeing any hands raised on Zoom. Last chance in the courtroom. We'll close public comment. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll put forward a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you.
I would like to remove item 7. I think that's an addendum item. Discuss it separately.
All right, we'll pull addendum 210930 out of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Maureen.
Anyone else? Or a second would be helpful.
Second with that change.
All right, we have a motion and a second with that change. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All right, can go to item number 7, Mr. Fraser.
I'll take that first. I guess this kind of looks like to me it's the county administrator has already acted in this. Has already acted on this already with the sending out the email to the media asking them to go on All Points broadband website and fill out the questionnaire. So, kind of looks like this falls under forgiveness instead of permission to start with. I don't know why we did that, but anyway, I just have a lot of questions still concerning the All Points broadband body application. This board and the corresponding authority voted to support going into phase 2 before the body application was submitted by All Points on our behalf, and no one from either board reviewed it before it was submitted, and I have questions with what was submitted. I think that we need to discuss those before we spend a whole lot more time, especially devoting the county administrator's time to it. So, and I will have a list of questions that I will propose at the broadband committee meeting. Maybe not a big list, but I'll have a written form.
Okay.
And I guess I would just say, I would wonder in what capacity Mr. Curry would be devoting time to the project. Would it be like project management or contract review or procurement officer? Or is there a scope that we're assigning to this that has duties attached to it? So we all are on the same page?
I believe you can speak to what the regional,
Well, I can't speak to what the Broadband Authority was thinking when they unanimously approved the motion requesting the board to do this. You may have a better idea than I do on that. But what I told that body was that now that the Board of Supervisors is talking about money, my statutory requirements kind of kick in to make sure that I'm engaged and involved in that process, and it makes sense for you to understand that and formally authorize some sort of action. I don't intend to take any large formal action unless it's requested. Procurement officer or contract manager or any of those things. But if those are requested by the board, I certainly could. If the board wanted to adopt a motion different than what is presented here, you certainly have that opportunity.
I think my view of this is there are things going on like we saw with this this sampling exercise related to the challenge to the VATI application, and I think it's useful that we have a single point of contact. So in its most benign form, I think that this just gives Mr. Curry the okay to perform that role as things come up. In terms of procurement or contract review and all the nitty-gritty legal and technical details that will come later, no doubt we have a pool of possible service providers who would help us in that regard, and I certainly would have no expectation that Mr. Curry as a non-attorney would provide legal services, or Mr. Curry as a non-telecommunications expert would provide telecommunications technical expertise or anything like that. I mean, we're going to have to enlist the help of people beyond him if technical questions come up when we get closer to a contract related to the VATI application. So, I mean, in the interim period, we do need a point of contact, and I think it is completely logical for our county administrator to serve in that role, and I think that's all this is about.
I would hate to see anything that would slow down the process of following through with what we decided to do. This morning, my broadband was almost non-existent, and those of us that don't have, Comcast and the assurity of that service are kind of more anxious to go ahead and get this pushed through and resolved so that we can expand broadband to the other citizens in the county.
I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to ask Mr. Curry to take on some hours. I'm just saying that we should ask the broadband committee to consider the different roles that are at play and to fill those roles and to be specific about the scope of work we're tasking our county administrator with.
I think we can definitely have that conversation with the Broadband Authority. I do believe in that same window of time. We also, the Broadband Authority, we also gave me permission to work with Mr. Curry, and I would expect that communication will happen quickly, especially during this challenge phase, and didn't really believe that we should slow down communication with the citizens if we needed it in a timely manner, which obviously I think the deadline is October 5th to have people get on the survey and say whether they're served or not. And then, of course, the next phase is in January, which will be the contract period. Between now and then, I think we all have the move forward with trying to find additional funding, grants and philanthropic, et cetera. So I don't think we want to slow down progress, but I definitely understand wanting to understand how much time Mr. Curry will need to spend on this. And I think the regional committee has a meeting maybe once a month, I don't even know.
I don't think it's scheduled yet.
Okay. I don't think there's anything in writing that's expected at this point from us. I did write an email to Brandon, the head of the regional commission, asking him, basically saying if there's any expectations we're going to turn something around quickly, please let us know, because that's not necessarily something we can do in a small county with the staff we have. So
Well,
I did not hear back.
I know the clock is ticking quickly now that the application has been submitted. So I just, I want to know what the defined roles are, and we've sort of talked about this, or the Broadband Authority has talked about this, and in particular, the technical expertise that seems to be lacking in some areas. And, you know, it's great that we've got Mr. Curry, and he's got his engineering background. But we had talked before about prior members of the Broadband Committee possibly stepping up when we got to this point, or serving as technical advisors to us. And I just, or to them. And so I just want to make sure that we are getting all these ducks in a row as things are progressing very quickly.
Yeah, and I think we, as I just stated a little while ago, I think we should move forward on that, and our next Broadband Authority meeting is a logical place to start nailing down those details so that we're ready to go when we need to dive into those details. But here, I think, again, the Broadband Authority, I think, made a motion that we consider approving Gary Curry as a point of contact and spending time as needed during this interim period. So I will go ahead and put forward a motion that we authorize the county attorney to devote time between
County attorney?
county administrator, lawyers, technical experts.
Your ears didn't perk up at all.
No, he didn't. Sorry, man. I've never.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's the first time I've ever misspoke. It's amazing. It was bound to happen. Adopt a motion. I'll put forward a motion authorizing the county administrator to devote time to the broadband initiatives that have been undertaken by the Rappahannock County Broadband Authority.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, further discussion?
I think that we really need to have an idea of what we're going to be looking at in the future. I mean, again, I sound like I parrot myself sometimes, but this board and neither body reviewed the body application before it was submitted. We had one, there was a constituent of mine that sent an email out asking if we were going to do that. There was not one reply. The leadership of both bodies did not reply, and no one looked at it, and we have a body application that plainly states that the counties have agreed to assist in permitting an easement acquisition. And we never agreed to any such thing, but yet there it is in our application. So I think we really need to know where we're going so we don't wind up someplace else in January. No one else seems to have that idea or that question?
I think that's another topic I call the question.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay. Fails.
It's got to be unanimous. Because it's consent.
We could get a little bit further if y'all wanted to talk a little bit more about it.
Okay, what's your suggestion?
But I'm not gonna vote any different today because of that. I was trying to talk about it before we got to a vote. You called the question.
Right.
All right, the vote failed.
So we should now move on to presentation of the two items from the consent agenda.
Correct. Thank you for that. We have two presentations, and we've got the recognition of local social services board member Susan Lang.
The first.
Oops, sorry,
in
am I out of order?
First is Ms. Ennis.
Yep, thank you. Didn't see that. Presentation recognizing Ms. Ennis.
And I know this came through the Public Safety Committee meeting, so I'll defer to the chair on whether you want to defer to one of them to make this presentation.
I think we have, I think Mr. Whitson.
It's, well, I don't know.
I don't think we adopted the consent agenda, did we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did.
I don't know.
I I thought we made a motion to take the addendum item out of the consent agenda.
No,
then we approved what was left.
adopted without it.
Okay.
All right, Public Safety Committee recommended the board to adopt a resolution of appreciation.
Madam Chair, Ms. Ennis is one of my constituents, and I know she's done a lot of work in recent months to help the Rappahannock County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Companies solve some problems that had arisen with the response district maps and some errors that occurred therein. And she brought her geographic information system expertise to bear on a volunteer basis, and we're all very grateful. And the Association and Public Safety Committee asked that we recognize her, and we all agree it was important to recognize her. So with that, I will go ahead and read a resolution of appreciation and commendation from the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors to Shannon Lee Ennis for her contribution to the Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue community. Whereas Shannon Lee Ennis is a resident of Rappahannock County and an active community volunteer, and whereas Ms. Ennis works for the Fauquier County government as a highly skilled Geographic Information System or GIS specialist, and whereas Rappahannock County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Companies earlier this year identified inconsistencies in the fire and rescue response district maps, and whereas Ms. Ennis learned of the problem, immediately offered her time and GIS expertise, and then volunteered many hours to help our volunteer fire and rescue community rebuild the response district maps. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors does hereby express its highest appreciation to Shannon Lee Ennis for her significant contribution, which will improve the ability of volunteer fire and rescue companies to respond to the needs of our citizens, and its commendation for her selfless service to our fire and rescue volunteers and all citizens of Rappahannock County. And be it further resolved that this resolution be spread across the minutes of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors for all citizens to reflect upon the contributions of this dedicated and generous citizen. So thank you very much. Thank you, Shannon.
Number 2. Now, we have the presentation to.
Susan's not here, but you certainly can read it if you want.
Chris, would you like to read this?
All right. This is a resolution of appreciation and commendation from the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors to Susan Lang for her contribution to the Rappahannock County Board of Social Services. Whereas Susan Lang is a resident of Rappahannock County and an active community volunteer, and whereas Ms. Lang has served for 8 years as a member of the Rappahannock County Board of Social Services, including serving both as the board's chair and vice chair, and whereas Ms. Lang during her tenure on the board helped to bring stability to social services agency operations, and whereas through her vibrant personality and engagement with the community, Ms. Lang helped to increase the agency's foster parent base while raising awareness in the community for the agency's programs and services. And whereas Ms. Lang brought to the Rappahannock County Board of Social Services a valuable perspective as a citizen, educator, and parent, which allowed her to lead the board through difficult times, including the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and 3 changes in agency leadership. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors does hereby express its highest appreciation to Susan Lang for her outstanding service to the Rappahannock County Board of Social Services and to all citizens of Rappahannock County. And be it further resolved that this resolution be spread across the minutes of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors for all citizens to reflect upon the contributions of this dedicated and selfless citizen.
All right.
Jessica can deliver.
Thanks for coming, Jessica. Thanks.
I think they're really here for the next item.
All right, thank you. So now we'll move into appointments. Appointment to the Social Services Board.
It seems we have a similar predicament that we have more often now than we used to in the past, Mr. Chair. My colleagues have some very capable people that have made application to be appointed. And no disservice to any of the others. I would like to put forth the name of Miss Kathy DeTeal. Is that pronounced correctly?
You did, yeah.
I was at church yesterday, and Kathy DeTeal approached me for her support, which I was more than willing to do. I did tell her that there were other candidates that were qualified, and she asked me who, and I mentioned that Harold Bebop was one of them. Well, he was also at church. And so this was after church, we're all standing outside. So I said, I'm pretty sure he's one of them. So she said, oh my God, if he's one, I defer to him. And she went and found him and talked to him. And so she basically said that she would like him to be the appointment, not her.
That's new information.
Well, and I'll just say, I stopped by Kathy's house yesterday afternoon to talk to her, and she told me the exact same thing. So I was more than willing to put Mr. Bebop's name forward. I think either one would be an excellent
With
member
that, I
of
will
the
withdraw
services
my
board.
nomination.
It's a good thing I went to church.
Yeah, and it's a good thing I stopped by.
For a number of reasons.
So if that was a motion, Mr. Parrish, I will surely second it.
Is that a motion, Mr. Parrish?
Well, I'll let you make the motion.
I would therefore make a motion that we go ahead and place Harold Bebop on the Social Services Board.
And I will second it.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
And many thanks to the folks that put their name forwards and their willingness to serve.
Yeah, there were a lot of qualified people.
It's a real testament to our
So
community that we have such a great pool of applicants.
What's the, what are the rules on the size of the Social Services Board?
Well, the reason you just filled 2 seats recently,
Right,
expanding from 3 to 5.
you're right, I remember that.
This seat is actually for Miss Lang, who just
Right,
is wrapping up her service in a couple
Right.
days. You appointed Mr. Parrish, who will be seated through the end of this calendar year with the expectation that you would seat another board member in January. You don't have to have a board member, so technically you could seat 2 citizens.
would it be I mean, could you have since we have so many skilled people, would it work to have do we ever have observers? Could you have a board
It's
observer?
a public body, so any citizen, including a board member, could attend their meetings, but then there are private portions of their meeting that are properly closed to talk about business that shouldn't be handled in public.
It's something we can talk about in January, I guess would be the right timing, because boy, I mean, talk about an abundance of talent. You just hate to not see these folks contributing to something that's important. And I think Kathy DeTeal just demonstrated what a person she is for letting someone else take the spot, and Harold's great, so we're fortunate. Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Appointment to the Rappahannock County Recreational Facilities Authority. I did ask Ms. Burr to be here so she could speak to you and then answer any questions you may have.
Pickleball or tennis, what do you prefer? That's the big question.
Don't answer that question.
Don't answer that question.
It was a trap.
I'm going to demonstrate my mediation skills and tell
You
you,
just
I
did.
think they're
You
both
just did.
great. My name's Becky Burr. I'm a resident of Flint Hill, and I was looking for an opportunity to serve the community. I mentioned that to staff, who said, I have a job for you. I am a gardener and very interested in preserving our native plant stuff. I've done a lot of work on nonprofit boards, and I have, in fact, served on many nonprofit boards. I have pretty good written and oral advocacy skills, experience with grant writing and those kinds of things. And so I thought I would offer my services.
Before, just remind the board that appointments to the Recreational Facilities Authority are to be done by resolution pursuant to your ordinance. And as I was preparing that ordinance, I recalled that Mr. Whitson put himself forward as a member, as a second board member until a citizen is found. He's holding a seat that would expire in 2025, and the currently vacant seat expires in 2022. And it might make sense for the board to swap those two things when you adopt this resolution.
Does that mean I can retire from my temporary service?
If you make the motion.
Yeah.
So what do we do? So you're just saying,
So you'd be adopting a resolution with specific terms, and you just slot in the right people in the right term end dates.
We obviously want to do this before she changes her mind.
Yeah.
right,
I do have a question. We struggle on the authority to find a secretary, and that was one thing in particular we were asking for when we put out a request for applications, is that we place someone on the authority who specifically is willing to take on the secretary role and keep minutes. So is that something you're willing to do?
Sure.
Great, thank you so much.
wow,
Very nice of you.
well played.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, trust me, you'll regret it. Yeah,
It's
okay,
not that bad.
let's hurry.
Well,
With that in mind, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution in the packet and put Becky Burr on the Recreational Facilities Authority as spelled out in today's agenda, with the exception of changing the terms a bit. And Mr. Whitson will be appointed for the term that expires in 2022. Ms. Burr will be appointed for the term that expires in 2025.
Great, I'll second your motion.
Is that sufficiently specific, Gary?
Yes.
Thank you.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Thanks very much
Thank
for
you.
stepping up. It's an important board, and it'll be good to have some new energy there. So thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
It adds a roll.
Oh, sorry, roll call. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
And I also.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
Whitson, you were second, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, Smith Whitson's, 2025. Excellent. Okay, appointing Board of Building Appeals. I don't think we had any.
Well, I have no applications.
No.
Okay.
Moving into old business. We have the RCWSA ARPA funding request update. And it looks like Sherry is here to give us an update.
Good afternoon. I always love being in this courthouse. It is so pleasant and beautiful. So I know you all enjoy your time here.
We do.
Anyway, I'm Sherry Woodard, the chair of the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority, known as the RCWSA. I want to thank you for your time and attention today as you listen to an explanation of our funding request and our plans. I've asked Pamela Parker, our operator and manager, plant operator and manager, and Gary Shirley, an engineer with Racing Engineering, to attend the meeting today, and hopefully they can answer any of your technical questions that may come up. By way of background of why I'm here today, I attended the August 16th, 2021 Board of Supervisors special meeting. At that time, I asked the supervisors to consider giving RCWSA a portion of the funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, known as ARPA. The county had recently received $715,000 from the federal government, and there were many items allocated for infrastructure, and some of them focused on water and sewer. I was pleased to receive great support from several supervisors and received their encouragement to submit a proposal that outlines the various priority projects the authority is undertaking or is planning over the next couple of years. Gary Curry researched the funding and sent an email on August 25th to the Board of Supervisors confirming that the authority was eligible for public utility expenses funding. So my proposal today is on the agenda. Hopefully you've seen it, and I hope everyone has reviewed it. We can go through it line by line, but I don't know if that'll be necessary. We could not get estimates for all the projects listed, so my dollar request today will be limited to the projects with estimated price tags included. Although this is the first time RCWSA has asked for any funds of this sort, I look forward to seeing you again as future funding opportunities become available for both wastewater and sewer. So now the big question, what's it going to cost? My request is for the Board of Supervisors to allocate $470,600 to RCWSA to complete most of the necessary projects outlined in the proposal. Now, I realize this is a big ask. Not as big as broadband, but it's still a big ask. However, the largest part of the request is budgeted for an equalization basin, or EQ, which is going to need major replacement, we think, by 2024 to 2026. The price tag on that is $380,000. The equalization basins are designed to provide consistent influent flow to downstream processes by retaining high flow fluctuations. And that's what will keep our water system, the Thornton River, safe and clean, or help it to stay safe and clean. The priority list that you've read and is up on your screen is not merely a wish list. The projects need to be done with or without ARPA funding. ARPA funding will allow the authority to accomplish the work at a rapid pace and maintain reserves for the future, and will help avoid having to endlessly raise user rates. As the system is aging, this is a critical funding request with a timeline. We are not in a crisis situation, but being carefully proactive about our future so we can avoid a crisis. Why would the Board of Supervisors give ARPA money to RCWSA? It is the first opportunity for county funding that the authority is specifically eligible for. RCWSA is an all-volunteer board of directors with one salaried plant manager and several part-time staff, in addition to the services of a bookkeeper and an attorney. The authority has been self-sustaining since its creation by the board in 1986, almost 35 years, and we received no funding in the budget from Rappahannock County. Moving forward, a strong RCWSA is in the county's best interest. Proper operation and maintenance of the Sperryville plant protects the quality of the Thornton River, which is part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Money allotted will benefit Sperryville, the Thornton River, Rappahannock County, and ultimately the Chesapeake Bay. We believe there is real potential for an expanded RCWSA role in future county wastewater and drinking water management. We can deliver first-rate service, better response times, and keep the ratepayers' dollars circulating in the local economy. We already are playing a vital role in the Rappahannock County elementary and high school wastewater and drinking facilities, which many people don't realize is part of the job that we're doing. When looking at the whole scope of work and services that we provide in the county, it is very apparent that RCWSA is a valuable resource and doing a great job on a very slim budget. At this point in time, the authority manages without any financial assistance from the county. We do receive clerical help on payroll, but that's a very small part, but we do receive that. But the authority pays for all of its own costs, including all the repairs and new equipment that we've been buying. Equipment bills, payroll, yearly audit, and insurance. I believe your decision to approve our request will make a profound difference to RCWSA, and it has major benefits for the whole county. If any supervisors would like to come and see the authority's plant in all of its full glory, or would like to visit the schools and view the work we do there, please let me know and we can schedule a meeting time. After looking through the proposal that I've submitted, I'd like to know if you have questions we can answer, and we've got 2 experts in the field here.
I've got, thank you, it's a great presentation and a great written proposal. First question is on the EQ tank, because I was on the authority when we had that, when the hydrostatic pressure problem and it collapsed inward, I guess. If I recall, we spent about $25,000 with Rick's custom welding, and he rebuilt it, and it looked pretty good. So what's happened? I mean, I know that nobody expected that would extend its useful life, but in what condition is it now? And I will confess I haven't been back to see it recently.
The tank is solid, but, you know, its structure is solid. But the top portions, it's corroded where, you know, where the water level goes up and down, the corrosion. That's the majority of the money.
Right, yeah, it's a big number.
Yeah.
Because I remember the total tank replacement at that time, whenever it was, and time flies, but I think it was $250,000, somewhere in that range, and that would have drained the authority's reserve completely. I guess I'm just, is it, and I'm not trying to nickel and dime here, but is the equalization tank to a point where you couldn't do another $25,000 or $30,000 to make the tank great again?
It's part of our proposal to.
I saw that in the near term.
Yeah.
So you're going to put money into rehabilitation, but then you're saying then pull it out and replace it.
Not necessarily. Okay. If we need a new tank with racing.
Maybe we could have Gary Schroeder
Sure, yeah.
speak.
Well, thank you. One consideration in an EQ tank is the fact that there's infiltration and inflow into the system. And when the records, they put in a flow meter on the system a little over a year ago. And then you can track the records, and they all track the rainfall events that are documented on the NOAA websites. So what we're looking at is one consideration of the EQ tank is if we cannot find the I&I points to control, we have to capture it. And right now, the tank that's there is not large enough to capture it.
Okay, so that answers my question. So there are 2 things going on. One is rehabbing the existing tank, and then if the I&I problem cannot be solved, then you reach a point where the tank in rehab form or otherwise lacks the capacity sufficient to manage your I&I.
Correct.
Okay, all right, that helps. And my second question, more for Sherry, I think, is a funding one. Are you, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea, because I agree with Ms. Smith. I mean, this is a great opportunity to really try to help out the sewer authority in a place that needs it. But I did have a question. Are you looking at any other funding sources besides county ARPA funds? Have you started?
No, in fact, Gary Curry has now put me on the list. So every funding opportunity that's coming up, it has my name, I receive it. So
As we all know, no vote happened on this past Thursday or this past Friday, and now possibly by the end of the month on the infrastructure bill that could have substantial dollars for this sort of thing.
yeah.
And if I may.
Yeah.
Also, Gary Recreational Engineering has been looking into.
Oh, wow.
They're on.
We set them up on the grants.gov website. So they have the access passwords to get in and look, and we get in and look. I mean, that's just continually updated with grants that are available. So we are checking into that also.
And Mr. Parrish and I were at a Rappahannock River Basin Commission meeting a couple of weeks ago, and someone from the Department of Environmental Quality was going on and on about, well, let's make sure the Hazel River is as clean as it can be. And I said, well, gee, I know a really old sewer plant that's upstream from the Hazel River. How about you find some money to help that sewer plant, which will help the Hazel River? And he said, yeah, well, that's not what this particular bucket of funding is all about. But it just seems like there's a lot of stuff out there. And again, I'm not trying to duck here, but it would be nice if, because we're gonna have obviously other demands on the ARPA funds. So.
I guess the biggest feeling I have about it is we've yet to get any grants.
Right.
We worked on one when we got the flow meter, but it didn't come to fruition. In other words, we did our job, we put it in, the plant paid for it, but there was a dispute between the vendor and us, and
I remember,
that we did not get paid back for all we spent, and that was, what, 35,000? It was substantial for the plant to absorb.
And then, Mr. Shirley, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so on the I&I problem, I mean, do you have a gut feeling right now? Are you willing to go out on a limb to say whether it can be solved?
We've been working on that since about January. I've been working with the authority since November. And,
Thank you.
We've been working on that, and the proposed, they mentioned this, like, well, there's some sump pumps around town that are connected.
Right.
And with the volumes of flows, it's like, well, could that really be it? And we're thinking, so we were to put together a plan of action, to look for possibilities, and if it come down to checking all the piping, since it's a pressure system and you can't really run a camera through it,
Right.
isolate section by section and do pressure tests.
Wow.
Just looking at ways to do it. Well, the board produced a survey and sent out surveys, and we found 16 sump pumps that are connected. I was at one site with Pamela one day, and the gentleman said, well, this basement was full. And just did a quick measurement, and that basement was 3,000 gallons.
It's a lot, and you multiply it by 16 or whatever. And
Yeah, that's a big, significant chunk of the I&I that we're talking about.
so it goes against your initial conclusion, which was how could this be the problem, but it might be.
But yeah, when we did that, I'd suggested that we'll stop working on the other part, the more extensive investigation.
Right.
Don't spend money on that yet. Let's see about getting these
Solve that and see if it
solved
makes a difference.
and
Okay.
see what kind of a dent that'll make.
Okay.
When you look at the flow graph, it spikes very quickly upon rain,
With the rain,
Right.
which
yeah.
indicates it is in large part inflow,
Yes.
and less so infiltration. So direct connection from sump pumps, roof drains, floor drains, things
Okay.
like that. It's just
Right,
All right.
going where it's piped to go.
right. The response from the people was good, They didn't hesitate to say that, yes, it was connected, because, we let them know, it's like, we're not trying to find out to punish anybody. We will help you remove it. And that's, we've given them a proposal to look at all the 16 sites and put out a basic drawing sketch to get it removed. So a plumber, handyman can follow the drawings,
That's
come
smart,
in and do
yeah.
the job.
Okay. Yeah, the last thing, Sherry, is I feel like it's a big request, but it's not outrageous. And I would only say, at least from my position, is like we did last year with CARES Act funding. I think and I don't think we've discussed this yet. We probably should have a standalone ARPA funds related meeting, so all interested parties who are seeking funding can come in at the same time, so we can do an on-the-spot reconciliation of what we have in the bank and who's getting what, because otherwise you run the risk of, this is a great presentation with a lot requested, and so I would want to look at it in the context of other requests, as long as you assure us that your plant is still okay for a little while we kind of go down that appropriation discussion path.
I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
I mean, it's an aging structure.
Yeah.
Pamela sent me a picture today of the plant when the Rappahannock News had a picture at the groundbreaking. And it was, so a lot of people in the picture are dead now, sadly. But it was built 35 years ago. So,
Yeah.
you know, things wear out. And I would urge you to, if you don't feel like you can fund the whole request, I do understand that. We'll continue to look for money. But certainly, I would love to walk away today with some kind of commitment.
I just think in terms of the way we can invest this money, it looks like it's about $30,000 or less for the I&I portion of this study and the repairs or the rerouting. Can be done for less than $30,000, and that may solve a lot of the problem.
Well, some of the other, I would say, more urgent needs, and including that, Pamela and the staff use a truck that has 303,000 miles on it, and it originally came from the Animal Control Board. And she's worked with Gary to look at figures for getting a new truck. We can only put things together with clothespins so long. So I think a new truck, if I had to give priorities, definitely the new truck. I think funding, we get asked all these questions all the time. Well, how big is the plant? Well, what's your capacity? We want an engineering company that is trained. You cannot ask a volunteer board to have engineering background necessarily, or you wouldn't have anyone on the board, from what I can tell. So I want you to really seriously consider, if you don't want to take on the 380,000, I understand it was a big ask, but it's important that everybody knows what RCWSA does for this county. And it's not just about Sperryville. It's for the whole county. Chris has a beautiful Thornton River flowing behind his house. And part of the beauty is that it's not polluted. And part of why it's not polluted, or the main part, is because what work we do at that plant. So I really do, if you want me on hands and knees to beg, I'll beg.
No,
But, this is serious. I think we need at least over $100,000 to get through the repairs. We've got Rick Milwaukee all set to go.
Yeah.
But we're a break-even budget right now.
So
What is I was going to ask what your savings balance is right now.
Savings balance is $256,000.
That you've accumulated over 30-some odd years.
Yes.
I think
The original plant was $2 million, and there was a grant.
Yeah.
So that was the last time any funding came into this.
Some of it's left over.
Well, and I just want to say, Sherry, I really feel the importance of this facility. I can remember back in the 80s, people would say, don't go in the river. It's not safe to go in the river.
Right.
You can't use, that might look like a swimming hole, but it's not. It's not a safe place to swim. You cannot go in there. So, I mean, I truly do understand the importance of this facility and the role that it plays, not just in the village, but, in our ecosystem. So I think I want to make sure you understand that, well, first of all, we have to find out from Mr. Curry, does ARPA work? Is it a reimbursement program, or is it that we would just?
Yeah, we've received the first half of the ARPA dollars. They're in your bank account today. If you don't use them properly, then they will be taken back.
Okay.
Basically, if it's found in an audit. So we don't want to do that. There are a lot of other factors that go into it based on the lost revenue category, and if you fit that category, then you can use it for general government services, which is a little broader. But most of the things that the authority does are going to fit in that utility capital category.
So a truck is a capital.
I would argue the authority should buy their truck. They have $250,000. If you need a truck, buy a truck. But I would argue for the board to invest in the studies to find out
We
what
definitely,
really needs to happen.
That is true.
So I'm trying to. It doesn't look like there's just a summary in here that of all the pieces that add up to your request, and because that's. I mean, Ms. Smith is right. I mean, we want to get you guys going here. The EQ tank replacement, I think, is a huge part of the request.
It is.
But
It's
the I&I
$380,000.
thing, the I&I study might obviate the need for.
I guess if you want to think real hopefully. Yeah, I mean, most of the consultant people we've talked to said it's very hard to fix an I&I problem.
Is there any reason to rehab your current EQ tank if you're going to replace it anyway? In that case, it's still worth rehabbing it because you won't be able to replace it for a while, or
Yeah, absolutely, it takes time.
okay.
It needs to be done.
Yeah, if you want to come take a look, we'll show you
No,
the
I know.
holes.
I just think there's a logical progression of these things, and the I&I study and that work should be the first, domino to fall.
So
And if we want to take the vehicle out of it, I mean, it's 470 is the full picture, minus the 380 for the tank, because, I mean, the language in the tank ask is, if the tank is to be replaced,
Right, that's what I'm
expect to pay $380,000. I think it's fair to expect we would also end up with some infrastructure dollars that this would be a prime candidate for, that maybe broadband isn't. So we have to bear that in mind as we move forward.
Yep.
That those pieces also logically have to fall into place. So, to me, if we get to the ask is 90,000 and we ask the authority to invest in the vehicle, we would really be looking at funding about $70,000 to get you through the studies and the I&I mitigation. And at that point, that study about the tank would also be done, and we could come back and take a look if the tank is necessary, or what is the best way to fund the tank.
Yeah, and I guess I could go either way on the truck. I mean, Pamela, what about the pump truck?
We have a new one.
Oh, you do? Congratulations.
New to them.
Well, it's
Newer.
much newer.
Okay, so that's taken care of. But, I mean, the authority's cash reserves have not changed except for the accumulation of interest. Because I think you're operating squarely on a break-even basis every year.
But definitely, unless we get a gift from somebody.
No,
And
but I
the
mean,
authorities had some robust discussions this year on budgeting and how they should be viewing their budget relative to their operational expenses and their near-term capital expenses, and then trying to structure them in such a way that they're planning for some of these longer-term capital needs.
yeah.
And I understand you've had a lot of input into that too, Gary, and thank you for
Some
that.
behind-the-scenes assistance.
All right, so I'm fine with Ms. Smith's approach.
So, again, last time you were up here, I asked the question, has your authority
Yes,
voted
it
on this?
has, and I even was going to bring the paperwork to show you. And
That
I'm
was the
sorry I
question
didn't.
I don't have it, so.
You were asking, last time you said to me, are you authorized by your board?
So they've authorized you to.
Yes, they have, and
They-
Gary can
but did
confirm.
they
It's in
vote
the,
on-
it's in the board
Did they vote
docs.
on the, either the priority or the sequence of operations that they're looking for?
No, they just authorized me as the chair to present.
They don't have any specificity as to. where
They're
they
kept
wanna go?
included on everything we've done. So they have this package, and I got approval from all of them.
To present it.
Yeah, there was no question. Everybody.
In an official meeting?
In official meeting, they voted on me as the chair to proceed. And then we haven't had a meeting. This has all been done via email, which is going to everybody at the same time. So we're all seeing it and hearing
So
it.
this still really hasn't been officially approved?
I don't think it was necessary.
There was a meeting very shortly after your last board meeting.
Yeah.
Ms. Woodard brought to the sewer authority whether she was empowered and authorized. During the meeting, there was a motion and a vote to so authorize her to bring this package to you.
They didn't know what the package consisted of?
I can't.
But we had discussions about what was needed, but they didn't see the final till a couple weeks ago when I started putting it all together.
That's not a real good way to run an authority, is it?
I think that given resources, it was the best way to go, Ron. I did what you asked, and I got the authority to approve. And
I don't know what you're talking about here today, really.
yes, they do, because it's a group of 5 people that talk among themselves all the time. And it's not like anything was secret.
Yeah, and I'll just
And we
say-
do use email. as a way to correspond.
I know the
And
I&I
communicate.
issue's been going on for a long time. It's been in the wind for a long time, and it really, the quicker it can be addressed, the better. It may solve the entire problem. You know, like Mr. Curry said, something's getting in there, it's getting in there quickly in large volume. And so it would make sense that it is inflow from sub pumps or something along those lines.
Terry? Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
The one question I have, when we were, Mr. Whitson and I went to a VACO meeting in Richmond, and they talked about $75 million going to DEQ for septic and straight pipe and sewer collection system repair and that kind of thing. I'm wondering if there was anything that was included in that for sewer systems for a municipality, or if you know about that. The meeting was August 18th in Richmond, and I took a screenshot of the picture because I'm thinking there's money coming. But I don't know that anything went to for.
I haven't heard anything. I mean, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have a job and I'd spend full-time doing this. But I don't have full-time, no one on the board does. So I think we took what little limited time we had, working within the August 25th date when Gary Curry said, yes, it will be available. And today's October 4th. So we've been working really hard to read all these documents and find the ones that seem to match. And I feel my board is very confident in me. I don't have any worries about that.
But what it sounds like to me is that we have an authority that is kind of having electronic meetings by having this email traffic going back and forth, and they really haven't looked at what you're proposing here today as a body. Is that
They have
incorrect?
looked at it, I'd say 4 out of the 5 have all seen it in person with me.
In an advertised meeting?
Was that one-on-one or groups of 3 or more?
Just one-on-one. I meet with a lot of individual meetings with the board.
So it sounds like what Ms. Smith suggested seems to be the most sensible route.
I just think about $75,000 for some repairs and studies that are just very sensible. It would be a great start for the organization. It's a splash in the bucket of the ARPA funds that we've received.
I think it makes sense. If
And,
that's a motion, I'll second it.
Okay. I need to clearly understand what the board intends here, and is this, we're gonna have to account for these dollars.
Right.
If
Correct.
they're ARPA dollars, and,
So maybe.
when we worked with the town, it was on a reimbursement basis, and the town had to provide appropriate invoices, et cetera, to show that there was a line to an appropriate expense. I think the authority's funding is out of CDs now, so it's liquid, is that correct?
Yep.
Which means they could front expenses and then submit documents to show that they do meet the requirements, if that, do you want me to just front $75,000 and then hope that the paperwork comes out?
Well, I
or-
think the items that would be the ones to capture would be the I&I study and mitigation expenses, which
I would
would
think
run
you'd
to
want-
about 30,000.
You'd want to include Rick's Custom Welding, that was
Yeah, that's a rehab.
$14,896.
Right, and then, so 30,000 for I&I, 15,000 for the tank rehab. And then it looks like the next thing is the surge, wait, I just had it.
Isn't the structural integrity analysis?
Yes, we want
Yes.
to do that analysis,
Okay.
Christine.
At $14,000.
Okay, there you go.
I feel like I'm on a game show.
Without going up there.
So-
Does that get us, that minus the truck request, I guess?
So what is
59
that?
So far.
What are we up to?
I have 59 at this point.
Well, I would say 59, and then with everything going on in the world, I just think we ought to allow for inflation or additional costs for materials.
No, I think we gotta.
Well, these are all studies for the most part.
Yeah, but you have to study it to know what you're going to need.
No,
and then
So
you-
repair.
There won't be inflation on studies because the gentleman
Right.
doing it is right there.
But
He's gonna
the
tell you
work
so.
on the tank.
Yeah. I say, I have a question. Like I say, some of these are studies and everything, so to get the proper, benefit from the funding, does it have to go out for, public?
The authority has their own purchasing procedures, so you have to follow the Procurement Act except for their small purchasing procedures, which they've adopted.
Okay, well, that's just what I wanted to check. We understand that under these grants and everything, that a lot of this has to go out for public RFP and everything, which, no problem with us.
And like for the Infrastructure Act that's coming, there's talks of Buy America, and which might just multiply the cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
So what do you need to do this in a way that keeps the records?
We can have the treasurer write a check tomorrow, but that may not be what you want.
I don't, it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. I mean, I don't know how liquid your,
They were in CDs, but they're not anymore.
oh, that's why I asked.
But I understand that when we do this, we have to account for it to you, so you can account.
Right,
Yeah.
you'll
So-
provide copies of
There
invoices.
would either
What
be
would
some
be
sort of
your-
an agreement up front that identified in contractual and stated you're getting X dollars for Y work, or there is more a looser arrangement where you're only getting dollars after you submit some documentation saying that you actually spent it for the appropriate use.
You have a pretty good amount of money in the bank, it sounds like. Could we do it on a reimbursement basis?
Yeah, if we need to. I mean,
It's
I mean, that way we would be assured that we would have the documentation that we need for the ARPA guidelines, and you would be assured that you'll get reimbursed for the funds.
I would think that if the board could write a check tomorrow, they could write a check to the contractors immediately when the work is done.
you could direct pay the contractors as well, but then you got to use our procurement stuff rather than their procurement stuff.
Yes. We don't want to do that.
So what are we agreeing to fund?
I would say, well, we're up to 59,000. I would say we better add 10% and make it 65 even,
Suits me.
But that's,
within the guidelines that
I
we've
think you're
discussed.
increasing the amount for the rehab of the tank
If
because
they
that's,
do the work and ask for reimbursement, at least maybe their board will actually vote on each operation, each expense before it comes back to us.
Well, I think that, I mean, with it being part of a larger program, with it being part of the ARPA program, we do have to be careful because the devil is in the details. And that would make sense to have it on a reimbursement basis, that we would
Yeah,
have all the.
our next
I don't see
meeting-
it being a problem, I just
no,
think it's a
and
good
I understand
process.
Ron's concern, and I understood it the first time you asked, and I thought we had complied with exactly what you asked for.
I'm kind of confused because I didn't hear it exactly the way that you maybe would hope that I heard it. That's not the way
Well,
I
we
actually
meet again October 14th. That's very close, 10 days. So whatever we get approved here goes back to the board.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think we had a motion in a second.
yeah, so 65,000 is that
Mhm. Yes, for those items we enumerated.
Clarify what the
I'd like to
motion was.
clarify who made a motion and who made a second for what.
I have Ms. Smith and Mr. Parrish. Was it in that order? Or?
Yeah. And it was the,
I study for 15, or for 30K,
And mitigations included in that.
custom welding for 15K,
And then the tank.
structural integrity for
Correct.
14K, or, yep, 14K.
Okay.
And then 10% round up to
Overage.
65K.
Mhm.
And it's a straight,
And in that motion, we're gonna reimburse them.
Correct, paid out on a reimbursement basis.
and then you'll report back to us once you kind of get the study stuff done. We'll have a better idea about
Yeah.
tank replacement, and then by then,
We want to
Should
move
go by.
forward as quickly as possible.
right, yeah. But maybe we'll find out that there's other infrastructure money coming. And
Yep.
so it buys us a little time as long as it's not urgent.
Will get us our next trench of cares, or ARPA funds, I should say.
It'll also allow the board time to appropriate these dollars,
Okay.
which none of the ARPA money is appropriated right now. And I anticipate a public hearing in December to add all that in to the budget.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
stay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry.
Appreciate it.
Human Resources.
Do you want to
Let Mr.
move Mr. Monty's items up? Sure.
I think that would probably be nice if the board,
I make a motion that we move up Mr. Monty's items.
you have two, it would be new item number 2,
H2 and H3?
H3.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
See you,
Any
Pamela.
opposed? Thank you. Thank you for your time and patience and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you for amending the agenda.
Mr. Monty and I have been talking for some time about redistricting. In most 10-year cycles, local governments would be well into the redistricting process and probably finished by now. But this is not most cycles. This is the 2020 cycle, which is different because of COVID. So everything's delayed, and Mr. Monty and I have discussed how it was done in 2010. The Regional Commission assisted the county in their work, and he's offered to the regional communities to do that again. And I think it is our best opportunity to get this done, given our GIS capabilities. Patrick, if you can.
No, as was included in the board docs on the packet, we have looked at the redistricting population, which accounts for the reallocation of prison population. So for the original census numbers that were released in August, there were some slight changes there. Numbers there that raised the total county population to 7373. So that would be the numbers we'd be working on in terms of equalizing the districts as best as possible. The requirements there are plus or minus 5% from that equal population number per district. If the board does decide to work with us, we would be able to start work as soon as the board wants to. I've kept an eye on the Virginia Redistricting Commission. As of right now, Rappahannock is included in single House of Delegates, single state Senate district. So that's one of the changes from 2010, which does impact the ability to do this work locally first, because the code change now requires the county to wait for the House of Delegates and the state Senate districts to be apportioned out and to be adopted by the General Assembly, just to make sure that precincts are kept the same at the state level and then at the local level. I think there would be, again, if the board so chose to move forward, I think you could move forward with some confidence that Rappahannock would not be separated by the Redistricting Commission or the General Assembly, but that would be a risk at that point to take. I will say we're working with Culpeper County and the town of Warrenton as well. So the number that was cited in the memo will not exceed that 1,125 for the share of the redistricting software, which the commission also pays an equal share as well on. I'm happy to answer other questions if there are any.
I'm just wondering what your process is should you move forward.
So some of that would be left up to the board, and I can share after the meeting the way we did it in 2010. We worked with the same 3 jurisdictions as well as Orange County. Each of those jurisdictions had a little bit different process. Some did a committee of the board as a whole. Some had individual one-on-one meetings for each supervisor or each town council member to go through. Some did a little bit, hybrid of those approaches. I would offer that in Rappahannock in 2010, the process was we were directed to develop a couple of plans to then present to the board to consider. Our office did that, and then the board had a meeting, a work session in the courtroom here, and made a couple of changes. Thought about, well, what could we do here? Did some zooming in on certain areas, roads where there was a boundary, and then ultimately came up with a plan that they put out to public hearing and was adopted. So we can be flexible. It's very much, we would have potentially a screen with a laptop hooked up, and we would be able to move census blocks from one district to another as needed. I will say, preliminarily, I don't think you saw the numbers that were there. Wakefield is the only district that exceeds the plus or minus 5% number, so we'll have to lose some population from Wakefield. I think there's probably ways to do that with minimal changes. Again, the board has the ability to kind of direct us to make as many changes as they would like.
Good. Mr. Parrish and I don't know if you remember, vaguely remember, but there was a screen and they flipped things back and forth, and it didn't take very long.
No, I will say Rappahannock was the quickest of the 4 jurisdictions we worked with 10
The
years ago.
fact that our population is about the same as it was 10 years ago.
And the other thing I would say, not to get too granular, but when you get into census blocks, especially when you get into some towns and areas, they follow strange, past boundaries where there's been a boundary adjustment, so you get some weird things. When you have a smaller population, it's somewhat easier to apportion out and to make those changes.
I've got a dumb question. Why are we working off the 7373 and not the revised number?
Yes, sir. So the 7373 there, the redistricting population, 2020 General Assembly, the General Assembly decided to reallocate prison populations. And so what that means is that so if it previously in this region, the region I work in Culpeper, there's a large prison in Culpeper. That district has about 500 to 600 inmates that are counted in that district, which inflates the population of that district. Now, 2010, that was just the count. The determination of the General Assembly in 2020 said any prisoner at that location that had a Virginia address at the time they entered into prison will actually we'll take that address and we will put them back into that at that address. So their address. So let's say they lived at 123 Main Street in Charlottesville. They were taken from that Culpeper district and reapportioned or reallocated back to the district where they lived. If it was an inmate that's in a Virginia, a penitentiary that came from out of state, then they were left in that prison location. So that's why you see there in Hampton district there were I would take that to mean there were 6 individuals that lived in Hampton district but are now being housed in a prison somewhere in Virginia outside of Rappahannock County, and so that's why the 6 there are added back into the redistricting population.
Yeah, I guess 7373, is it coincidental that was our...
It is. So I noticed that too and said that's pretty odd that the number is the same, but so that's a coincidence.
Because that was our population 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and if all of the districts were within 5%, you wouldn't have to you'd be done. You could just vote for
leave the districts
the
the
new
same.
districts are the old districts, put a public hearing out and be done.
Are we obligated to, there's no way we just can't accept
You have to.
Wakefield having 1594?
Unfortunately not.
So we gotta lose approximately 50 people from Wakefield, right?
We're not going to lose them.
No, I think the magic number is 104.
100. Well, so so the Wakefield, you're correct, Mr. Parrish, is that Wakefield would need to lose about 50 to get to within that 5% ceiling limit. You have the option then of also adding to the other district as well. You just don't want them to exceed that 1549.
I think 104 was the most that Hampton could take.
That's correct.
So what do we do now?
So what I've asked the board to do is authorize me to execute the short agreement with the Regional Commission to allow them to help us with this. And then we'll move forward on that process, albeit not in any hurry, and we'll wait for the state to do what they're doing right now, and maybe they'll figure it out, maybe it'll go to the Supreme Court.
Again, the Redistricting Commission has maps out. I would encourage anyone here to look at what they've come up with as for public hearings in the next week or so. There's no guarantee that whatever they produce will be accepted by the General Assembly and adopted. So it's one of those processes that we'll continue to kind of work through.
Okay, I'll put forward a motion that we authorize Mr. Curry to execute the attached, or the memorandum of agreement with RRRC that's attached to our packet for GIS services to assist with the census redistricting process following review and approval as to the form of such by the county attorney.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
We're no longer under that Justice Department thing in here in Rappahannock, are we? Where voting districts have to be approved by them. I think we got out of that a couple of years ago.
So in 2010, you did seek pre-clearance. That requirement has actually been removed across the pre-clearance requirement's been removed. So yes.
I just want to make sure my memory was correct.
Good memory. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to intermodal transportation grant village planning.
Well, Ms. Donahue, you had a conversation with Mr. Monty about Flint Hill. I know Ms. Smith has had many conversations over the last couple of years about intermodal transportation in Sperryville, pedestrians, cars. We don't have too many other forms of transportation and don't have to fight the rails here. Mr. Motti brought forward a potential 100% grant-funded opportunity for some studies to be performed. And he knows more about it than I do, so I'll let him.
Sure, I'll briefly go through. I know included again on the board docs was this is the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, which is a state agency. Their Growth and Accessibility Planning Technical Assistance Program. This would be currently right now the first year of funding that they provided is being used. This would be the second year. There's a deadline of November 1st for applications for this technical assistance. It's not so much, I mean, it's a grant, but there's no money that changes hands. Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment has 2 on-call consultant contracts with various firms that have various subcontractors included. So the process is they do their application intake, again, as I said, November 1st. When they go through and select out the projects that they feel will meet their needs and that they would like to fund, they solicit from both of those on-call consultant contracts. You have a scope of work developed between the local agency or the regional agency that's overseeing it. Then they solicit from those 2 consultant teams fee costs and fee structures for those projects. The money, again, is paid for from Office of Intermodal Planning directly through that contract. So regional or local, there's no money that comes in. I can state that the Regional Commission submitted a project last year on behalf of Culpeper County and the town of Culpeper for a small area plan transportation focus, just kind of on the eastern side of the town of Culpeper. The process has been fairly simple and does not require a lot on the local or the regional staff in this case. We have a monthly call, we develop that scope, and we basically oversee the work that the consultant team is doing. We've got a monthly meeting where we've got the local government staff, VDOT staff that participates, others that are interested. We haven't gotten into, because of the timing of that one, we have not gotten into the full analysis process yet, but that's sort of where we're heading right now. But it has been a fairly a good process to work through. And as I understand from my conversation with Chair Donahue, that there's a couple of villages in the county that may benefit from putting an application in and seeing where it goes. That being the case, the Regional Commission would be happy to work with the county if the board so chose to submit an application or work with us to submit one. We'd be happy to, if it went in under the county's purview, then we'd be happy to serve as kind of the lead staffing and just provide that service if it was something the board chose to move forward with.
I do know that I have heard from citizens, one of which is here in the room. Thank you, Nancy, for coming. That right on 522, obviously the traffic, whether it's 25 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour, tends to be, it seems like it's 60.
I assume you're speaking of Flint Hill.
Yes, Flint Hill. And so I just thought this was an opportunity after speaking with you that if there's no cost to the county and we can do an analysis that may give us more information than we've necessarily received from VDOT, I don't know. I would definitely be interested in it for Flint Hill. I've got folks asking why we don't have, a safe cross from one sidewalk to another and things like that. So I'm definitely interested in it for the Wakefield district in Flint Hill.
I mean, it seems to be an ongoing question for Sperryville, and I mean, I've talked with VDOT many times over the years, and unfortunately, some of the areas of concern just don't seem to qualify within certain parameters. But this may be an opportunity to kind of change the rules of the game through some alternative funding. So it would be interesting. I guess my question is always. Right now, it's very challenging for some people to engage in public meetings. What are the opportunities for public engagement and how does this process evolve?
That's a very good question. So I can speak from the existing process we're going through with Culpeper. The county staff and the area that's in question in that study is entirely within the county. They are running updates through their planning commission. It's not they have not formed a separate committee to oversee it. It's basically they're kind of taking it and actually kind of running it as part of their comprehensive plan update process. In terms of the public engagement, I do think that's something where that is one thing that would fall back on the locality or the regional level to say, as part of this, we want additional public engagement. The scope development process is where you can kind of lay out, okay, we're expecting 1, 2, 3, 4, however many public meetings from the consultants coming out. The more public meetings you ask for, the higher their cost is going to be on that side. And so they might say, well, we can do more public meetings, but less analysis. So I think it's a fair question. I think they'd also be willing, not to go back to the broadband discussion, but be willing to do some digital engagement tools if that was necessary. But I think there is the opportunity to kind of guide that from the local and regional level. It just comes at as everything, a cost of what you're giving up to get better public engagement.
I think there's an opportunity to have some of the studies that VDOT requires for example, mid-block crosswalk to get wrapped into this and have OIPED, work on that and try to drive, how do we change the existing conditions to meet those? And, do we need to improve the existing pedestrian access on one side or the other, or different things like that?
Right. One thing I would say is I think the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment is looking for ways to develop projects for funding sources, whether that's smart scale or revenue sharing or whether it's safety funding that they have. And so I think they're looking for ways, I think they're using this program as a way to engage localities to do some of that planning, to identify some of those priorities in a little bit different way that, we normally see from a VDOT driven process. Mm-hmm. So, because the Office of Intermodal Planning oversees it's VDOT, but as the grant program says, it's multimodal. So they're really focused on not just road and not just moving cars or traffic, but trying to get all the modes together.
So if you were going to bring this forward for us, what would you need us to do today?
Today, I guess if the board needed to approve, there's not a resolution that's required. There's a letter of support basically saying that we support this project. Or this application. I think what would be helpful for me to also know is if the board preferred the commission to serve as an applicant or if the county wanted to be the applicant for the funding. As I said, I don't think that the outcome, if it was awarded, would be any different. I think commission staff can put it into our work plan that we have with VDOT every year and put that time whether we're the grantee or the program lead or not. I will say we've got another jurisdiction that has indicated interest too, so it would require me to sort of balance out, okay, can we put in 2 applications? Do I need one of the localities to serve as their own? Even if the county wanted to put the application in themselves, our staff can fill out the information, provide that in. It would basically just be a turnkey operation for county to hit submit.
I don't want to squelch any other conversation if anybody else has anything to say.
I have no villages in the Hampton voting district.
But it could be used for the town as well, but I wouldn't want to presuppose the town's interest.
No, I know.
I think you mentioned the town had done something.
Well, we did, the commission last year just did a sidewalk inventory in town earlier this year and, just sort of and frankly, a lot of it was already in the town's comprehensive plan, but sort of documenting and doing some field work in terms of the conditions of the sidewalks. I think this technical assistance through this program is frankly more in depth than what our staff can provide, and certainly opens up to having some engineering and some additional GIS. It's not going to give you cost estimates for here's what everything's going to be, but it could give a vision for this village or in and around the town. What are some of the potential?
So would the town, Patrick, would the town government, town of Washington government, have to approach you and apply separately?
I mean, I guess that would be, now that we're down to a month here, I could see a case where if you had 2 of the villages in the county and the town saying, we would like this kind of technical assistance, that it could go in as one, project rather than
Right. I don't want them, though, to slow down our effort on behalf of, I mean, I could see Chair Donahue like,
They can separate and I guess
so
the town could submit separately,
could
right?
they settle
the town could submit their own, sure.
Okay, all right, I'll talk to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it may be something where if the town submitted one and the county submitted, then I would
So-
hope, would look at it and say, is there a chance to combine these,
I
or
think,
what's the
I mean,
opportunity?
the request is an authorization by the board for either the regional commission or staff to submit this grant application before November 1.
And I would say I'd prefer my preference would be that the regional commission handle this for us. I know that you all do a great job. And we've already just asked Mr. Curry to do some additional duties today for broadband, and I just don't want to.
We actually didn't.
No, you didn't.
Well, that's right. Well, we will eventually. It was voted down, but we will eventually do that. And
I agree with you. I think it would.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think
I
it's a
think
great
so.
chance for RRC to help us out, and I know you all will do a really wonderful job.
Great.
Is that a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
A motion from Ms. Smith, a second by Mr. Parrish.
And then Gary, would you mind just sending a note to the mayor of the town of Washington, just let him know that we voted on this and just make him aware of the grant program existence? And just mention me in there.
Any further discussion?
Thanks.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you very
time.
much.
Really appreciate all the work you all do.
Thanks a lot.
All right, now, where am I?
I believe it brings us to G2.
G2, thank you. All right, going into G2, Human Resources Contract Services with Baker Tilly.
I was asked to provide an update on this, and I cut right to the bottom line, is that as I concluded the narrative in the packet, is that it's been very challenging to push this project over the finish line. The board agreed to fund a compensation and classification study some time ago, before COVID. And we drove through that, got to a draft study complete, which has not been released for confidentiality reasons. And as soon as it leaves my office, then it's a public document. And it's just not ready for that. COVID happened, everything went sideways. The board wisely adjusted your fiscal year budget last year, and then fortunately this year found a way to fund implementation of that study into this year. But the data is aged and requires a little bit of work, and in the interim it occurred to me that with a couple key separations in our constitutional officer departments, that we needed to expand the scope of this study to include some more defined career ladders for our constitutional officers so that they had a better opportunity to retain and promote staff in situations when they were able to provide more value to the organization. So not just because they worked here longer, because they had more skills, broader skills, and able to apply them in a more beneficial way to the community, and therefore perhaps retain somebody rather than have them take a job in a neighboring community that happens to have many other different types of jobs and different rungs on the ladder. The idea would be that we would have multiple grades or class in the classification and compensation program. Each of our staff is classified into basically a grade on a whole scale, and we would have a number of positions that are graded but not filled. For example, we might have an entry-level deputy, and then a master deputy, and a lieutenant, and a captain, and a sergeant, and we may not fill all those positions, but the sheriff would have the opportunity to make promotions, and similar would go into place in the treasurer's office, commissioner of revenue. Less so in the Commonwealth Attorney's office, where it's really a two-person show for now. So that work is underway, and Mr. Minor and I have been working on that. Actually heated up to a boil here recently when we lost an employee in the Commissioner of Revenue's office, and there was some discussion of whether there was a way to retain that employee and to see if we could roll something out quickly, and it wasn't in the cards. So that's an update. Promised the constitutionals a number of times that they will be seeing something very, very soon, and have not been able to deliver on that. Continue to have the same message that we're very close to getting this over the threshold. Happy to answer any questions.
I just feel like this thing has an expiration date, and we've kicked it down the road several times, and been told it would be concluded or as close to being concluded, and I really just think we need to wrap it up. And I don't mean that, as a negative mark against staff or as a criticism of anyone, because certainly we all have, our priorities, but I get asked often what's happening with the compensation study, and, it's been several years since we authorized it. We do need to finish it up.
I don't disagree, though I will say that it wasn't funded in fiscal '21. It is funded in '22, and that fiscal year is 5 months aged, and that's on me.
Is there anything we can do or Baker Tilly can do more of?
But I don't think there's anything the board is not in the way on this, and my schedule and Mr. Minor's schedule, and just making sure this stays at the top of the pile.
And I think the other thing is we tend to visit this every budget cycle. And, my recollection from our last budget cycle was that we would get it done, so we would have it ready for the next budget cycle. And
That is still the intent.
And it is coming up quickly.
Yes.
Maybe it would come up quicker if we weren't going to do something as drastic with the broadband.
Any other discussion?
I just want it to stay in our sights so we get it concluded and are able to have something ready for the next budget cycle.
All right, thank you. FY 2021 Emergency Shelters Upgrade Assistance.
The board is well aware of this project. We've worked through the design with the electrical engineers, and I still don't have the final quote after submittal review, but I have a quote that's close enough. Similar to the project here on the county campus, the concept is for us to purchase the equipment and then hire an electrical contractor to install it. That's the most cost-effective way for us to move that project forward. So what I'm asking here is for the board to authorize award of the contract for the generator and switchgear to Fidelity Power Systems, who is providing pricing off of the Sourcewell National Cooperative Procurement Contract for this Kohler generator and ASCO ATS.
So moved.
I'll second the motion to award the purchase of the generator equipment to Fidelity Power Systems not to exceed $93,721.
Is that safe at the 93?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
You have the contract documents, they're working them up to...
The design documents are done. That was married up with the submittal review that Dinesh just did and his team. And so now it's order the equipment and put it out to bid. The lead time is still very long. Last time I checked, 17 weeks.
God.
Wow.
So, and it'll take careful coordination with the schools on doing this when they have a downtime that we can schedule.
17 months, did you
Weeks.
say?
Weeks.
Weeks, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking for something and it took them 4 or 5 months to get back with me to see if I still needed it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
It'll be great to get that done.
Yep. Yeah, 17 weeks is horrible in today's situation. We are on to recognition of citizens serving on board appointed groups, proposed policy 811.
Board will recall I prepared a draft policy for your consideration a few meetings ago. It was referred to the Rules Committee. At the last Rules Committee meeting, there wasn't a quorum, but I was able to work with Ms. Smith on some potential changes, and I subsequently shared them to Mr. Frazier. Those changes are shown in the document provided on board docs from the draft, which essentially changed the tenure that would be required to automatically receive a resolution from the board from 8 years to 5 years, or at the recommendation of a member of the Board of Supervisors. So that is the change from the draft. If the board would like to move forward and adopt this policy, you could do so today with a simple motion vote, or you could change it further and discuss it at a later time.
Any discussion?
If nobody feels strongly about it or thinks it's okay, I would go ahead and make a motion that we adopt it.
I'll second your motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If I recall correctly, you were actually looking for some sort of guidance. Does this
Yes,
fill that?
this is very, we had a couple of resolutions tonight, and it helps my office as well as those that are requesting recognition to prepare in advance, make sure everybody has the opportunity to be recognized.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Moving into recommended change to Board of Supervisors meeting agenda policy, policy 820.
Similarly, at a recent board meeting, there were several public hearings held in the evening that caused the meeting to go rather late. This policy was, there was discussion about that. The board referred it to the Rules Committee. This was discussed at the same Rules Committee I noted earlier, and Ms. Smith and I discussed it. I incorporated the changes she suggested and later shared them with Mr. Frazier, and now they're here before you. Pulled the policy up, and the essence of the changes are to add a public hearing agenda category during the day session. This would immediately follow presentations, and it would be restricted by a new paragraph B that says the order of business item public hearings parentheses day shall include public hearings that were authorized by the Board of Supervisors during a previous meeting to be advertised for a day session hearing. In no case shall land use public hearings be scheduled during the day session. So this doesn't come up very often that we have a lot of public hearings, but this is an opportunity for the board to include an opportunity, but only in those situations when there was the board was asked to authorize a public hearing in advance.
So I'm just trying to think of examples where we had, public hearings is the sort of thing where it almost falls into administrative day business. I was thinking the whole floodplain ordinance, but that's technically land use. But we've had other things that are just topics that frankly no one in the public would logically even engage in.
That's social services business that was
it's
on.
difficult to going from 3 members to 5 members. There may be citizens out there that feel very strongly about that.
Right.
It's probably not very likely, but it's
Yeah.
possible. Just because you create the category doesn't mean that the board will ever pull the lever, because you would have to, at a preceding meeting, vote to do it.
Could give us more ability to manage our time well, I guess, right?
Or trade daytime for nighttime, or
Yeah.
Well, and the bottom line is we had an issue, and this is a possible way to solve it. It is a large departure from how we currently do business, and you all probably want to think about it before you decide how you feel about it.
It's a good idea, except that the agenda wouldn't be posted while we had our previous meeting, so we wouldn't be addressed with the situation.
It basically takes 2 months, and many public hearings would come to the board to authorize advertisement in advance. So there's one today. I think the next agenda item. Or 2 agenda items from now. And so the board could choose to authorize advertising the public hearing regarding the bonus consideration that the state has gifted us with during the day versus during the night. And the board can make that decision.
Chris, make your point again. I didn't quite catch that.
Well, if it's it would have to be authorized by the Board of Supervisors during a previous meeting. Well, that would be a month prior,
Correct.
and the agenda would not be before us. We wouldn't have the agenda So how would we know?
It would, just like H1, there would be preliminary consideration of something.
On the other hand, there's absolutely no harm in adding this to our.
It will always require a vote of the board at some
Right.
point in
There's
time.
no harm in having this. I don't really see it's that efficient, but it's fine to add it. It's fine, you never know.
Well, if you'll just think about it and let me know if you have a strong feeling about it one way or the other. It seemed to me like it might be a reasonable release valve and keep us from stacking up 8 or 9 public hearings in one evening.
Right.
Which hopefully will never happen again.
Right. And like I say, okay, that situation where it did happen, if this were in place, would we have had the opportunity to implement it?
In particular, the one that stood out to me was the additional members to be appointed to the Social Services Board. That really bothered me because we essentially had an employee here until midnight.
Right.
And
Well,
we should not be doing
That
that.
was bad.
Well, you had a couple employees.
Well, I understand that, but Gary, at least you live 5 minutes away. You live 5 minutes away, you know, whereas some employees that were here live an hour and a half away.
But we didn't
That's
have
very
the agenda.
dangerous.
We didn't have the agenda.
Yeah.
We
So-
didn't have the option.
And so many times during the meeting before that meeting, there were many times during that meeting where the board authorized an advertisement for a public hearing.
Right.
Now, others just matriculated onto that evening, so the
Right.
two came together.
Right.
There's certainly no harm in it. So, we can do it.
So am I hearing maybe that you want to bring this back at a future meeting,
Yes, please.
and a specific future meeting?
Next month.
Okay,
That's the will of the board?
sounds good to me. Thank you for bringing that to us for review. All right, water resource protection and monitoring, that's just one we're keeping on.
Right, and so just to be clear, that's the overarching discussion
About
that
wells.
stems out of the Beaver Dam analog. Keep it on our radar. I don't have anything to add this month.
Okay.
All right, preliminary consideration of bonus for sheriff's office employees.
So this is the agenda I was just referring to, and the General Assembly and Governor were nice enough to adopt a state budget that includes $3,230 for each full-time state-funded sworn law enforcement officer. And so for Rappahannock County, that amounts to $25,836 in revenue because we have 8 of those such employees. Unfortunately, we have 20 full-time employees in the sheriff's office, and so the state provides this great opportunity to our staff, but only funds some of them, leaving the board with some very tough decisions. If the board were to fund all full-time employees, and I've talked to the sheriff about this, her request is for the board to fund all full-time employees at $3,230. You would net the state revenue against that, which would leave a liability for the county of $38,764. The sheriff indicated that based on her current staffing, she didn't think it was necessary to consider partial bonuses for part-timers at this time. The Code of Virginia requires localities to adopt an ordinance if you are going to give a bonus. And you know that Section 15.2.14.27 tells you that you must hold a public hearing if you're going to adopt an ordinance. So this is a preliminary agenda item seeking direction on how that public hearing notice should read in the newspaper for a November 1 public hearing to adopt this ordinance in advance of the state's prescribed deadline of November 30th, before which they want you to pay this bonus to those 8 sworn officers.
I'd go ahead and make a motion that we vote to advertise a public hearing for the payment of this bonus to the 20 full-time employees for a total of $64,600.
So we've been presented with this problem before.
Correct.
And we went ahead and did it for all the employees for the sheriff's office, but not for any of the county employees, which created a little bit of resentment. If this money, if the So the the state revenue would be 25,838 for 8 employees. And I think that it's not unreasonable to accept, that amount. Let the sheriff pick 8 individuals to give that money to, the 3232. And then once it's in their name, it's their money, there's no reason why they couldn't turn it back into a pot. And then the sheriff could take that pot and distribute it amongst all her full-time employees. And that way we could get the money from the state and the county would not have to add any money. The employees would not get the 3230, they would get something less, but they would all get something and it wouldn't burden our taxpayers any. It's kind of along the lines of, people that work in a restaurant where they share tips. It all goes into one pot and they divvy it out to share tips. And I don't see why we can't do that. Go that route. The sheriff would just have to have the understanding and the deputies would just have the understanding that, yes, they would get the money in their checking account or whatever, and then they would be willing to put it back into a pot that would be divvied up amongst all the deputies.
And I think I was just thinking about if it could be just provided the sheriff's department a lump sum, and I talked with Mr. Curry this morning about that, and I believe the answer is no.
We will have to show that we are providing these 8 sworn deputies who are funded by the state. They are specific individuals in our organization.
Right. They would.
Those dollars, right?
It would go to the specific individuals, and then those individuals, I'm sure, would be willing to turn the money back into a pot for the sheriff's office, and then it would thereby be divvied up amongst all the deputies.
I don't think the county could logistically be involved in that, but they
it'd
might
be up to the sheriff.
do it on their own.
It'd be up to the sheriff to do it.
Do you know how little they need?
This is a bonus. This is not much.
I know.
Yeah.
Either way, we still have to have that ordinance in a public hearing, don't we?
Right. So
Depends on how the public hearing be worded, doesn't it?
well, right now, the draft that I've provided, board will consider granting $3,230 bonus to each full-time sheriff's employee. You could say, I think that does it.
Yeah, so let's just do it and have the discussion
So
then.
So they can go either way
I
after
think
that.
you could do
Yeah, that's fine.
one or all, or
Then we can figure out what we want to do.
All right, Ms. Smith, do you want to amend your
I
motion?
don't think she needs
I
to.
think it's fine for the way it is,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
don't include the total amount, and it'll just be the notice included in the packet.
I'll second your motion if someone hasn't already. I think we got discussion before a
We
second.
did. Any further discussion?
Just making sure that the way it's now characterized does allow us potentially to fund with local dollars the additional amount. Is that correct? The way it's structured and the
It
way the hearing
says
would be organized?
which bonus will be partially funded by the state.
Okay, so that's broad enough that we don't preclude ourselves if we decide to put local dollars into this. It wouldn't preclude us from doing that, am I correct?
I don't believe so. I can, Mr. Goff and I can parse the language to make sure it meets your
Basically, we
expectations.
want that process, the public hearing process, to allow us to make a decision one way or the other.
Right.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
I think it's really interesting for Richmond to furnish these dollars. I think that's a good thing, but I wish we had a little more discretion as to how they were paid out, so it wouldn't create these,
Right.
questions.
Just like the school funding, it's a great way for them to leverage local dollars
Yeah.
with their dollars.
Correct.
I wish there was a way
They can
to.
do it for you.
It's probably not the right place to say this, but since we're talking about discussion, talking about the bonuses for law enforcement, I think it's just a political ploy on those in power in Richmond right now to try and make up for all the trash mouthing they've been doing law enforcement for the last 2 or 3 years. But I didn't actually say that on public record, so.
I'm sure Julie didn't record it.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure you just said it. Yeah, you did. I heard it.
All right, closing discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Do we need a break or is everybody good?
I don't know.
I could push through, I would, but I'll go
Let's
with
take
the
a break.
flow.
Take a break? Okay, 5 minutes.
So I requested it as an agenda item for this afternoon, especially in light of the feedback we've recently gotten from VDOT where they don't seem to be interested in making too many changes through the 211 corridor. I keep seeing more and more of these in other localities. And as Mr. Nesbitt said, if they are indeed useful for slowing speeds by about 5 miles per hour average for motorists, I just wonder if the board would be disposed to fund them through Recycled CARES Act money, or I'd be open to whatever's the easiest way to get these funded. The thing of it is, it's a thing of value. So if we get them and everybody should hate them and they don't work or help, we could always resell them later. But I do think that they, in many ways, are the most logical option for getting people to slow down through that stretch with no help in sight from any other sources.
How portable are they?
Not.
Oh, so you couldn't like
Has to be
switch it back
mounted.
and forth between
Oh.
Foothill and,
No.
No.
These are intended to be pole mounted.
They had a pole-mounted one on Colvin Road, which runs between 211 and 229, and they removed it. I don't know if it was a test or what that was. But it looked like the very same ones that I've seen that have been sitting for 2 or 3 years in the same spot.
The VDOT has an engineering bulletin, you have to follow certain steps, and it has to be a crash-worthy pole, and basically you either have to run power to these or have a solar unit. So I would assume they'd be solar units. I did receive a quote from this company that has them in the plains. The people in the plains told me to sketch out $15K per location with installation. I think we could probably do better than that. The material quote is $16,200 for 4 of them. I was just thinking maybe 2 Sperryville, 2 Flint Hill, but I don't know what the board ultimately wants to do. And then we would have to get them in somehow.
Sperryville really needs 3 at least. You need 1 as you're coming down from the park. People really speed through there coming off the mountain.
Now, there may be some restrictions to putting in areas that are not. There are certain restrictions on where you can put these.
Okay.
And these are the 2. The roadway is residential and/or pedestrian oriented with no more than 2 lanes, 1 lane travel direction with a posted speed limit of 40 miles per hour or less, or the 85th percentile speed exceeds the posted speed limit by at least 10 miles per hour. So we know that 211, we just did a speed study there and it's over 45. The other item is, or an other non-residential location deemed appropriate by the regional traffic engineer. So it's possible that that individual who just signed the recent study would view this as a consolation prize.
I mean, I think coming down off the mountain where it goes from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and then as you come in 522 from Culpeper into the village, I think these would be all perfect spots for these displays, and as long as they are the sort of displays that can go dark overnight.
Yeah, and
Programming, I think, is important.
Programmable.
Yeah.
yeah, the ones because I'm in the plains all the time, and they're not. The plains is pretty tiny. I mean, it's a tiny little village, and they don't look terrible at all.
I didn't read carefully enough to know the programming. They do go dark when you can set a speed below which they're off, no light at all. But then if somebody were to drive by, it would pop in. I'm not sure if you can put a schedule in it or not.
Yep.
I think I would need to know that from the citizens that live right on 522. They may not want a flashing yellow light in their window.
Well, you can buy them with strobes and all sorts of things if you'd rather.
Yeah, I don't think.
No, thank you.
Everywhere.
Excuse me, how many are we talking about total? You think you need?
I would need two, one at each end of, down past Settles and one right there at the church when it goes up to 20, or goes down to 25.
And then I believe Sperryville really needs 3. We may need 4, one down the rescue squad end of Main Street, but we definitely need 3.
I'm just trying to think around the town of Washington. Not really a fodder stack, maybe coming in business 211. No. Okay.
Why
are you talking me out?
The location at the rescue station, I guess people might peel off. Just trying to.
I just can't
It's
imagine
a tough
that
spot to
the town
locate
would want
a
to.
sign.
There's
Middle and Main
there's a
Street.
speed limit sign right there. They have one.
But
I think VDOT just
I mean,
moved it.
outside near Baldwin's, as you're coming into town, because
Gotcha.
people roar through there.
Yep.
That's 35. So.
Maybe one out past Baldwin's. That's the only one I can think of. But yeah, I mean, Crystal Jenkins sits out there all the time and clocks people for a reason.
Yeah.
So I didn't anticipate any,
Vote today.
Do whatever the board wants to do. If you have specific locations, we have a way to purchase based on the dollar value. I'm gonna have to do some sort of bid or something. Particularly if we start adding more and more signs.
So that's 6 total, right?
That's going to be a lot of signs, so, and then we gotta figure out how to get them in, whether VDOT would want to have us have a work area protection manual, a plan and a crash vehicle and all those things on the side of the road when people are digging the hole for the concrete,
Right.
for the sign, so just having
Pardon me.
our friend go out, stick them in the ground may not work. We might be able to work something out with VDOT and the sheriff's office, or fire company or something.
Well, I'll take the Baldwins off the table if you all want to pursue purchasing 5 now, and then I can I'd prefer to talk to the town of Washington before I do that.
Yeah, the Sperryville Community Alliance told me they bought one of something, but I don't know if it meets the state standards.
Right.
We may put up those 5 as kind of a test and may find
Yeah.
out that people actually hate them or
Uh-huh.
absolutely love them and want more.
Right.
That's what I keep seeing more of them, and all the feedback I hear is positive, but to some extent, until we publicize it widely, and put at least one or two out there for folks to see, we won't really know how people feel about them.
The other good bit about this type of sign, this actual version, is that it will record the speed and you can spit it out in all kinds of charts and whatnot, and
Oh wow, interesting.
we can
Keeps
use
a
that on
record.
our behalf when we're talking to VDOT about. They put a speed strips down for 2 days, but we've had data for 6 months.
Can you find out if there's any discount for certain quantities?
There is, that's
Oh,
on
there's-
they
sorry.
gave us a discount on the quote.
Okay.
$1,700 off the total.
Okay. That was for how many? I'm
4.
sorry. 4.
But you can, hands are kind of tied. I mean, our purchasing ordinance requires us to be competed.
So I would just ask then that we authorize Mr. Curry to go ahead and move this forward and include it on next month's agenda for additional review by the board for the 5 signs as indicated.
And I think I'll reach out on the Flint Hill area and just talk to the neighbors, show them what we're thinking about doing, just to make sure there's not a huge pushback.
And let's maybe hear it in the evening next month if possible, and that way, it'll be probably more
comment.
visible and get more public feedback on it. I'm sure the paper will be very kind and include this information in their article about the meeting.
Work for you? Okay.
And I'll mention it to the town of Washington.
Somehow I don't think that fits in their plans.
Well, out here though, I mean, I know.
That's not the town.
Chris, you don't need one in your district?
Well, it's not,
One of you town, of course.
it's not the town, but it's, I'm sensitive to,
Yes.
I know where the town is, trust me.
All right. Any further
Your
discussion?
disturbance in the force.
Moving on to the ESO purchase award.
Okay. So Mr. Polster didn't need to make a special trip today to do this, so cover it. Those of you who attended the last Fire and Rescue Association meeting, this was up for discussion. Image Trend, which is the current software that EMS agencies are mandated to use to report their run call information to the state, is, I think, was bought out by ESO Solutions, and so all the EMS companies have to switch to ESO Solutions. Similarly, the fire stations need to submit their data to the state through Firehouse, which I believe similarly is changing or going away. At any rate, ESO Solutions is able to provide both fire and EMS reporting, and Mr. Polster has worked with the association and the reps that they have, and come to, I believe, agreement that we can replace both the Image Trend and the Firehouse and have just ESO Solutions. The EMS side will talk to the fire side, and they'll cross-populate data when you have accidents that are linked. And all of the data will be able to report up and out when needed to provide a better understanding of overall calls. The association has been paying for this expense for the Firehouse software. They have a $1,900 credit right now, and so that credit would be applied to this fee today. So this would be shifting what is now an association cost paid by the county to a county cost to cover all of the volunteer companies as well as your EMS fire company when that's off the ground. What I'm asking the board to do is authorize the award for this purchase that is available from state contract through VITA. And we did ask the fire folks to provide some concurrence. And that was done by email. I actually did print out emails if you want them. We asked for just plain concurrence. It was not that clear. We believe, based on the association meeting and this email communication, that everybody's on the same page wanting to move forward on this. Even though our request for it to be absolutely clear wasn't met with clarity.
Well, I would make a motion to award the purchase of ESO software for fire incidents and asset management for the $18,924.70.
I will second your motion.
Motion and a second. Discussion?
So all the chiefs were in agreement that this is a good idea?
I can't say that. Mr. Polster said he did speak with each chief and none objected. But when he asked people to get on writing, this is what we got back.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Berkeley Group Zoning Ordinance Assistance Purchase Award.
This topic came up at the Planning Commission meeting about trying to leverage our relationship with the Berkeley Group that was used previously for the comp plan review to help expedite some of our zoning ordinance amendments. The Planning Commission voted to authorize their chair, Mr. Whitson, to work with me to develop a scope of the Berkeley Group for up to, or no more than $10,000 of work, knowing that that was my award threshold in the purchasing ordinance. And after that, Mr. Whitson and I spoke with the Berkeley Group representatives, and I brought to the table, well, there's a board meeting coming up, and the Planning Commission has a $20,000 budget. Why not just go to the board and see if they're willing to award the full amount and you can get the most done? And so that's where we are.
And the planning commission voted to authorize that?
I don't think the Planning Commission has to authorize the board to take any action.
I mean, the planning commission is talking about hiring this consultant. I don't know what's happened to my throat, I'm sorry. But I don't understand, maybe we need a little bit of discussion there. The planning commission discussed this and authorized the chair to work on a scope. And how do we say it? Where was that? Scope and fee with the Berkeley Group, but I thought that they were going to review that before they went any further. Is that incorrect?
That's not how I recall it. But.
No, it was, we had a discussion about what's it called, a town hall agreement. There's an existing town hall agreement under which the planning commission did the comprehensive plan work, and it was within that to work with the to define the scope of a project up to $10,000.
Mike, Mr. Whitson.
What does the scope consist of?
Well, the scope included basically what, I mean, for example, getting the sign ordinance completed, and what were the other all the events language in the zoning ordinance, and that was kind of the start. So and we talked at the planning commission about those specifics. So
the sign ordinance.
The sign ordinance was a part of it, and also all the events related stuff. Yeah.
I would have thought that.
And that money had already been budgeted, and so it's just been sitting there in the planning commission budget for outside consulting help.
Okay, that seems to be understandable, but I thought that the planning commission was going to tackle the lighting ordinance. I mean, the sign ordinance by itself, and get input from the county attorney on that.
Right, and
that didn't happen.
It has been happening, and in the interest of speeding things up, given that we had money in the budget for outside consulting services, the planning commission agreed to authorize me to work with Mr. Curry to pull in the Berkeley Group under this existing town hall agreement, which seemed like a pretty efficient way to get some additional help. So.
This may fall under the same complaint that we've heard several times from members of the planning commission. Why would this board spend money with the Berkeley Group again, when the last time we spent money on the comprehensive plan, they recommended that the board, as part of the comprehensive plan, adopt local village maps. And this board, by majority vote, took those maps out of the comprehensive plan, and in over a year, we haven't done anything about that.
To be fair, Mr. Frazier, their analysis indicated that they could be used or not, and there were pros and cons for both approach.
Yeah, they didn't recommend them.
The way I read and understood it, and the meeting that we had at the school over there, the gentleman that came up from Representative Berkeley Group, he recommended that we did should have
When I
maps.
asked him directly, he said it's up to it's an either or.
Mr. Whitson.
Well, what are we looking for then if we're not going to take all the recommendations? I guess that's my question. What are we actually looking for to spend that we may spend up to $20,000?
So you're saying we don't necessarily need the Berkeley Group, right?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so, because I don't know that we know where we're going with this thing yet.
Well, a few times tonight we've discussed wanting to accelerate this project or that project, and most of these funnel through myself and Mr. Goff, and to the extent that we can bring additional bodies to that calculation, we can probably get more done.
Correct.
I mean, a sign ordinance, normally the way it's done in Virginia is we let the big localities spend their money to create it, and then we kind of cut and paste it and make it fit our local jurisdiction. And in order to do that, you kind of, got to get the documents together and have a work session or something.
We've been doing it. We've done that. We've already done that.
So you have a sign ordinance ready to adopt?
I didn't say that. I said you just talked about work sessions and looking at other larger localities, and we've had a very robust discussion in this regard.
Then you have a product.
I didn't say that. We don't yet. And so to the extent.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I just don't understand. I mean, that's kind of what we did before, and that's kind of what they did 35 years ago when they adopted what is now the zoning ordinance. They had a series of work sessions. It went on for quite a while, and the finished product, was put together and it was adopted.
The operative term there is quite a while. So given that the Board of Supervisors determined in the budget process that it would be worthwhile to supplement volunteers serving on the Planning Commission and county staff with outside consulting help if needed, it was my judgment that we ought to draw on those monies that are in the budget. So that was the whole idea, and I think we don't need to, the sign ordinance should not take much longer to wrap up if we could just have them help us determine look at our draft where it is now and then finalize it, compare it to other localities and nail it down and move on, and then move on to the event stuff and any other items that are in the queue. So it just seems like a sensible way to supplement our county staff, as Mr. Curry just articulated. So
Then the Planning Commission has a plan forward.
well, yeah, we're trying to get through the work plan that was established last year, right? And we've had numerous work sessions, and it's my judgment that we could use some outside help to get the work done.
And the commission voted to do that?
Yes, around and around we go.
Yep.
I'm just trying to figure out though, where will we be headed with this 20,000 expenditure?
The discussion we had with the Berkeley group, basically, and Mr. Curry, you were on the call, so correct me if I'm not remembering correctly. So we sort of prioritize the sign ordinance and then the various and disparate event provisions of the zoning ordinance and trying to craft that into a more manageable ordinance that we could actually implement and enforce. Those were kind of the top two starting places. And we wanted to start out with items that we think can be completed relatively quickly and for a relatively modest amount of money. So when we got into that discussion, it became clear that this limit of $10,000 might stand in the way of getting all of that done. I don't know that it'll cost up to $10,000, but this would just give us more flexibility with them. And again, the money has already been budgeted to the Planning Commission, so we were simply just trying to get the okay from the Board of Supervisors to just be able to have $20,000 available to work with the Berkeley group. And that way we don't have to keep coming back and having these discussions. We can try to get the ordinance work done. And I appreciate your point, or your implied point, that we should speed it up. So I'm trying to speed it up.
Well, I appreciate that because things have been languishing for years, but I'm just trying to figure out then what is the scope? Because if we don't know where we're going, how do we know when we end up there?
Mr. Curry, what was they were going to provide to us sort of a written scope based on our video conference.
Yes, well, they're providing services right now in a couple different localities, I believe Abingdon and Page County. And just over the mountain there have performed what they called a full diagnostic review. Some of the things that have come up here recently that we need to be cognizant of relative to our approval process for rezonings or special exceptions or special use permits. Another set of eyes would probably be good on those areas as far as a full diagnostic. And then obviously we have those items that have been on the referral list for a very long time to the Planning Commission to be considered for amendment in return for public hearing, and they could expedite those as well.
Do you know with Page County, are they working on the solar language with Page County, or did they not indicate what they're working on?
I don't think we talked about.
We didn't get to those
details. We talked about solar generally, and,
Okay.
and as another area where we definitely could use some help.
Because I know that's been in process over in Page County, so
Yeah.
I was wondering if.
But I don't think in that context they mentioned it. No.
Internet searches will pull up some of the work that they've done.
I don't think, excuse me, I do not know what's going on with my throat, but I really apologize for that. I, for one, see, that's part of the scope process. I don't think that we really need to focus too much on the solar right now. I think we've got the sign ordinance issue, and we've got several others that we need to deal with that have just been languishing, but
Right.
solar's behind us as far as I'm concerned.
I
think we
was
got-
just curious if they were working on it. I
And I
didn't mean to
understand.
sidetrack us.
But I think we've got something in place that can protect the county, at least in the short term, and I think we have more immediate concerns.
Well, I have to say, I would like to see the sign ordinance work wrapped up. We referred it, I think, originally in 2018, and then again in 2020 in the spring. And I know it's a fine line to walk because we do want to encourage artistic expression and have a beautiful community. And at the same time, we have to have a clear spot where it does become commercial and people don't want billboards and that sort of thing, and would be very up in arms if it were to lead to that. So whatever we do, we do have to make sure that it does hold water. And to me, that's the place that I think the Berkeley group really brings value to the situation.
Thank you.
And can provide insight that we otherwise, just through only knowing our own situation and not having encounters with other localities, that we may not have insights that they may be able to supply to us.
Right, and what you just described there is why I think Mr. Curry made the good judgment to come back to the Board of Supervisors to not limit the value of this work order number 2 to $10,000, because I think as you get into these things, not to say I'm eager to spend more money than we need to, but rather as you get into the nuance of these ordinances and might lead to other questions in other areas of our zoning ordinance, hopefully this $20,000 cap on work order number 2 would give us that flexibility to just kind of get the work done instead of getting bogged down in administrative discussions.
Well, I don't want to belabor it, but is it very hard to pull up what that list of outstanding planning commission work is, Mr. Curry? I don't know, forgot myself.
While you're looking, I do know that the citizens that I speak to are very concerned about making sure our zoning is as strong as it can be for the future. And given that we're seeing judges coming in from larger counties, it does concern me that we need to make sure that we put a lot of effort into looking at what we do have to make sure it's strong for tomorrow, not just for today. And I believe the Berkeley group could help the Planning Commission a great deal moving forward and not have issues take as long as they have to get them over the finish line.
Yeah,
And not so frustrated trying to get something done.
Did the Berkeley group say who they would have assigned to the project?
We spoke to their planning director person.
I think those details will come out once we nail down what they would do first.
That's my only concern ever with bringing in outside organizations, that they may not have the same sensibility as we do as a county.
Yeah, we made it very clear to them that Rappahannock was not a
counter engineer everything we know.
wasn't a growth locality, and they needed to understand, and that got into a conversation about how many site visits would be appropriate and how many meetings would be appropriate to gather community input, et cetera.
Great.
So what are we looking at that's outstanding?
Sign ordinance,
This may not be fully checked out, but sign, the golf driving range, professional offices, NHC, public art, which is part of the signs, family subdivisions, temporary structures, the events.
the events is kind of the one that we had a work
This one
session
should be
on. just
checked,
'cause
short
it's,
broadband towers, and then events.
yeah, short broadband towers done.
Those are the items that were formally referred to the Planning Commission by the board. There are other items that have popped up over time, like strengthening the language for special exceptions and special use permits.
Right.
So you need a motion to authorize the full 20,000 budget?
Yeah, it's just, it's written, award consulting services as part of work order number 2 using the Berkeley Group Master Agreement not to exceed $20,000. And then we just work with them in more free form than being bogged down by the $10,000 cap
And I assume
and having to come back a second time.
as chair, you would keep us up to date on
Yeah, for sure.
the efforts.
And like a lot of people, I think they're busy, strangely, counterintuitively. And so, I mean, I don't want there to be an expectation that they're going to get the work done tomorrow, but certainly we told them that we really need them to jump in as soon as they're able. And hopefully, while we are small, they know that we are great and that they will make us a priority. And Ms. Donna, just to add on to what you said, I mean, I really think, I said this to somebody the other day at the Fire Stack 10K, I mean, what matters in Rappahannock County? Land use, policy, and zoning, I mean, period. So I just don't want to B-team it. I don't want to cobble together solutions. And, you know, it's taken me a little while to realize the importance of professional consultants. And I think it's just worth pulling folks like this in when needed. And as you said, just to make sure that what we have in our ordinance is ironclad and has been really well thought out. So I think most people would agree this is an area where we need to focus and spend money if needed to get the job done correctly.
Is that your motion?
Oh, sure.
You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, so
That's gonna need to be restated.
no, I will. That was a motion and a soliloquy. So I'll go ahead and put forward a motion to award consulting services as part of work order number 2 using the Berkeley Group Master Agreement not to exceed $20,000.
And I'll second that.
Oh, go for it.
I'll second that.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
You kidding?
Be glad to get it done.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Victim witness grant opportunity.
Mr. Goff is here and has an opportunity for 100% state funding to improve quality service to our local victims and witnesses, I guess.
Yes, we're one of, I think the lady told me, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, we're like one of only 4 counties, or two, it's a low number, that don't have a victim witness coordinator program. I came before the board probably, I don't know, 10 years ago or 8 years ago, where we had to provide a local match of funding for the program, and upon further reflection, we said no. It was going to have a chance of being extremely expensive for the county. But now, through the Federal Victims of Crime Act, the state is able to provide 100% grant funding for this program. There is no local money expended for it whatsoever. The Victim Witness Coordinator is the resulting position that handles victims of crimes, and it's emphasizing specific areas: domestic violence, sexual assault, and these are victims who often have extraordinary needs going into these prosecutions. So as part of this grant money as well, we can apply for consulting services that are, here again, funded by the grant, to provide some mental health care and alternative housing and so forth. The coordinator will be responsible for making those kinds of judgments. The coordinator's job would be to identify the victims, reach out to them, and be an interface between the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office and them, which is an essential function, because a lot of times these victims and witnesses have no idea what they're in for and how the system works. So to have someone who can shepherd them through the process makes the prosecution of these types of very nasty crimes much more efficient. So I'm asking the county to allow Mr. Curry to act as the grant administrator. Ms. Nick, our treasurer, has agreed to act as the chief financial officer for the program. And of course, I'm the program manager or something like that as the Commonwealth's attorney. The person that would be hired would be housed in my office. We have that extra space up front, have their own phone, copying, but they would have their own budget through the grant to provide for office supplies and other needed day-to-day expenses. So what we need is you're okay to create that agency as part of the Commonwealth Attorney's budget. And I need to get the application in by November the 1st because the DCJS board is going to vote on our application on December the 9th. If they say yes, which I'm assured that it's very likely they will, the funding would be available as of January the 2nd. I would need to hire a person, and that means I would have to advertise and interview. So this person would be full-time. They do not act as investigators or process servers or anything else. Their time has to be 100% devoted to victim and witness service.
Well, I can say from personal experience, I've talked with Mr. Goff about this because last year I had interaction with a constituent who was involved in a case, and it became clear to me as that person contacted me with questions about the process that we had a hole there in our system in the county. And recognizing we're small, you have to be careful about saying that we need what a big county like Culpeper or otherwise might already have in place. But I think this really is perfect because it allows us to fill that hole with no local dollars. And so with that, and for further discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we authorize the Commonwealth's attorney to apply for 100% grant to fund a victim witness coordinator and support the program when awarded. And I don't know if I need to add those details about the role of Mr. Curry and Ms. Nick in the motion, but
By definition, the CAO has to be the administrator.
Okay.
And I am the county's CFO, but you can't wear two hats. So like for CARES, Ms. Nick filled that role. And
I want to thank Mr. Goff for his groundwork on this because I've talked to folks in our community like Sally Morgan, and they also think it's important. So I really think we ought to do it.
We have a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second.
Discussion for questions. So is this something that has to be done on annual appropriation, the federal government?
Yeah, it is. The Victims of Crime Act right now is 70% of this whole total budget for Virginia, 20% from our victims fund, 10 from the general fund. The volatility of the federal funding has been kind of extreme. And so Congress has before it right now a bill that would flatten that so there wouldn't be this roller coaster anymore. But the Victims of Crime Act requires a local matching contribution. When I say local, I don't mean at the county level, I mean at the state level. So the General Assembly has committed a lot of money going forward.
That would give us some continuity maybe.
That's what the bill before Congress is trying to do, is give us continuity, stop the worries. The lady gave us an example. We had a 2-hour meeting, what was that, last week, Jerry, or something? And she emphasized that, look, the funding's there, especially now that Congress has taken up this volatility issue. And the reason was that the beauty of the funding source of the Victims of Crime Act federally is fines and costs out of the federal judicial system. It's not taxpayer dollars. These are attachments upon conviction for crime federally across the nation. Well, obviously that's going to fluctuate from year to year. So Congress has stepped in with what I believe to be a fix-it bill. I'm not clear what the funding source for the fix-it bill is, but I would imagine it would probably be from some sort of general appropriation. But so that's what I know about how the money's coming.
And the money is provided in 2-year allotments to localities and then refreshed for those localities. We would be jumping in with an 18-month cycle to get on cycle with everybody else.
Not to throw too large a curveball into it, but in those discussions about the new facility, would there be ample room in the office as proposed to house this?
that was one of the comments that Mr. Goff provided previously to Mr. Vaughn, is the need for this potential person.
So we would be covered, we wouldn't,
I believe so, yes. I
I
have
mean,
to
we
go back and review
hate to
it.
put those people in a closet, just,
Well, yeah, and it's like Culpepper's office is separate from the Commonwealth Attorney's office, and that's what I understand, it's somewhat inconvenient.
I would think.
But Page County's victim witness coordinator is right down the hallway. I mean, literally.
Gloucester
Two
was in
doors
the
down
same
from the
office.
CA's office. And these folks are invaluable because you really need a friendly face. You know, I'm not Mr. Friendly, okay? And I got somebody who's a weeping, confused, scared person, and I'm sitting here talking like Mr. Curry. These are the facts, man. This is how it happens. Well, you need somebody who's got a little more emotional connection to folks.
You're shortchanging yourself a little bit.
Well, you know, just my experience.
I think you could
you
do
ain't
it.
exactly as dry as Jack Webb.
Yeah.
You could do it. It's a resource issue.
Yeah.
It's a time issue.
Well, there's that too.
Because they'll come back with the same concerns over and over again. And you get a reluctant witness, like in a domestic case. Oh, they want the cops to come out and save them. And then they got cigarette burns all over and black eyes and stuff, and they're all hot to trot. Well, then when it dawns on them that hubby's in jail and can't make the rent payment, then they want him out. So we need somebody to deal with that problem.
Yeah.
The other population is older folks and elder abuse, and we talked about that.
Yeah. Elder exploitation is a big deal, especially in this county.
So if it helps you do your job better, I think that's a really worthwhile endeavor.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Was there a second? Good.
Any opposed?
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Maybe
you.
if it can help end the cycle.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was great. County vehicles.
I included in the FY22 budget $25,000 to replace one vehicle, 2006 Ford Escape that Mr. Atkins uses for erosion sediment control. That unit is out of operation right now due to some expensive repairs that we've deemed not to be worthwhile. Transferred the county administrator zoning vehicle over to that department so they can keep in business, and we're just using personal vehicles now. So I would like to go ahead and replace that vehicle with a new vehicle as was budgeted, and it is over $10,000, so I need the board's authorization to award. This is a little bit smaller than the Escapes we bought last time on state contract. Is a Chevrolet Trailblazer, which is smaller than the old Trailblazer and smaller than the Equinox, but it is upfitted with all-wheel drive for winter and whatnot.
Can I make a motion to approve that?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. DEQ. Opt-in, opt-out.
In this last, the special session number 1 of the 2021 General Assembly, the General Assembly passed changes to Code of Virginia 62-144.15:55.1. I mean, they're really getting deep in the weeds there. Basically, what it allows is localities to ask and rely on DEQ to perform erosion sediment control plan review for utility scale solar facilities that exceed 5 megawatts. We just received a letter that's attached requesting us to opt in or opt out. There's nothing in the code language that suggests we need to opt in or opt out. Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation District handles our ENS plan review, as well as for some other surrounding localities, and we pay them every year to do that. Had a conference call with all the localities in our region and Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation District, and pretty much everybody on the call was of a mind to retain control of this process should we ever have a facility greater than 5 megawatts and have CSWCD perform that review rather than DEQ, in which case the timing and quality of the review may not align with our expectations, but closer to the home, the more influence we would have on it. So I'm looking for authorization to send a response to their letter to opt out of their offer.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. I don't know. anything to do with UDQ.
Second.
That was Mr. Fraser, second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? VACO voting credentials.
It's that time of year, VACO conference is coming up, and we've received our annual letter requesting the board to identify who your voting delegate is. And I believe so far, Chair Donahue and Mr. Whitson have registered. I'm not sure if any other board members have registered or wish to register for the conference. Last year or the year before, you've increased your training budget to allow pretty much any of you to register if you want to.
Get when it is again.
November, yeah. But if you want to register, just contact my office. Because Chair Donahue is going, it seems logical that she would be your voting delegate, but I did not want to assume that.
I'll make a motion that Chair Donahue be our voting delegate.
I'll
Second.
You get that one.
Okay, Donahue, or Perry Smith. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Just to let you know, Warren County's board did vote to have me vote for them as well. They have a board meeting that day and won't be able to stay.
You'll be their proxy.
Proxy, yes.
Wow.
All right, now the question is, do we want to move these items down to the evening? The evening isn't.
Please, so
Yes.
moved.
Yep.
Hold on.
That was Ms. Smith, who was the second.
Who's second?
I'll second.
Okay.
And just to be clear, you're moving,
Everything else.
hold on. The information, reports, correspondence, and matters presented by the board to occur when?
Good question.
At the end of the 7 o'clock session.
Okay. After the item.
After new business and before adjournment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank
Very
you very much.
civilized people I work with here. Thank you.